Okay, welcome to episode number 59 of Killer POV. I'm one of your co-hosts, Rob G. from Icons of Fright and FEARnet. The non-winning, I don't think we won a rondo for Icons.
Oh, you didn't win a night on
I don't know. I haven't looked yet.
You were nominated.
We were nominated. You know who else was nominated?
You're supposed to say it's nice just to be nominated.
That's like just saying
Nice
you
just to be
suck.
nominated. But also nominated was Elric Kane
Was it?
of Killer POV.
Oh.
For generally being awesome.
Killer
Rebekah
POV did not
McKendry
win, and Rebekah McKendry. Hi.
from
I'm here
Fangoria.
too. Yeah.
But we
And
should
Killer
thank you all
POV.
for voting. We've only
Yes.
been around for a year. We got the run. We said runner-up.
We were like third
It made it
place.
look
I'll
third. I
take
don't know
it.
if it's in order. But regardless, we lost number one spot. It was the problem with that category is that it's multimedia, so you can't really say you're competing against theater.
Yeah, I was a little
Theater show
confused because
that
we
won.
lost to a theatrical radio show, and we were in there with there was YouTube shows and
Yeah, it's a
video
little-
shows and news shows.
It'd be cool if they would move it to a straight. Either way, we still would have lost.
Of the
Because
top
Rue Morgue-
three,
Yeah, but Rue Morgue beat
Rue
us
Morgue is
still.
Morgue's podcast one ahead of us?
It was
They
second.
were
yeah.
second.
Oh, okay. All right,
They're
fair
runner-up. But regardless, we've only been here a while. You guys who voted, thank you very much for voting.
Yes.
And I think it probably saved us some sort of Yoko thing, because probably if we had won, we would have split up and all become too big.
Yeah.
So probably you kept us here for another year.
Elric would have been on heroin by now.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's the way it would have
But
gone.
no, it's nice just to be nominated.
Yeah.
I was just honored
is.
that people were voting for us because people kept
I
posting
cut the
up
shit. We're fucking pissed. We wanted an award, and you fuckers don't love us enough.
people kept posting up I've never heard of the Rondos up till now, but I have voted for you. And I was
Yeah.
like, man, that's
There you
kind of
go.
cool. They never even heard of it, but they're going out of their way to vote for us.
And you really do have to beat the drum for these kind of things. You know?
Yeah.
It's a little tough.
Thanks.
But,
Got
uh,
a good nod too for that Roger Corman issue.
We won that one.
Yeah.
So
There
that
you
was
go.
awesome.
There were
Best
some
magazine
winners.
was Rue Morgue too, so I wonder if Rue Morgue, maybe these Canadians just vote in droves. I don't know. I have no idea.
Fango
They're all
won
on
for
top of it.
best theme issue for our Roger
Yeah,
Corman issue.
which is great. Did that win cover?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it was best theme issue. It did
Okay.
not win
Great
best
though.
cover.
It is a great cover. That's I voted for that for cover.
Yeah, that was Amma took that picture,
Yeah.
and she's just amazing. So.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
But anyway, it's great. Great that everyone's celebrating.
Yeah.
So we've been all types of traveling.
We've been all over the place. We were in Texas.
More thanks to deserving there.
Oh my God.
Texas was
John Holland.
amazing.
John Holland, our personal savior and
Dustin.
chauffeur.
Dustin and Stacy. And who could forget DJ Big Ray?
DJ was awesome.
Yeah, so there you go.
Sorry we kept you waiting for the picture. But
That's when
no, it was
Elric
really
was
cool.
all like, I'm hungover
I
and
was.
I'm
I
hungry.
peaked too soon.
And
No, Elric
peaked
and I
too
made
soon.
a lot of poor decisions in terms of eating and preparing properly.
They didn't
And
feel poor at the time.
There was a point where Saturday we thought we were going to die.
Yeah.
And we decided let's order room service
right.
since we have zero food options. That way, if we pass out and die, it'll be in our room.
Yeah, but somebody recognized us from a floor down, so I had to drink whiskey from the balcony above. We can
Which
tell that
is
story now.
insane.
Shenanigans.
yeah, we
The
had
person knew we were from Killer POV. When is that going to happen?
We
You know?
had a video of Elric. Someone was pouring
never see the light of day.
whiskey or tequila into his mouth
Unless
from
you
the
ask me
floor
to see
above
it.
with Elric bent over backwards off the balcony drinking the whiskey that was being poured from the floor above.
Sure, but there was somebody who ended up, we found out later, is going to work for you at Fangoria.
Yeah, I'd already.
It was
She
an
she
amazing
starts in a
coincidence.
month. We've already
Yeah.
hired her as one of my assistants,
And her aim's great, so
yeah.
I say good choice.
So she is in. Thank you, Deanna.
Unfortunately, Saturday and Sunday, I didn't have nearly as much fun because of that. But
Yeah.
Yeah, you looked a little rough on Saturday
peaked.
morning.
Yeah.
it was an interesting. I had never been to a convention where people stay there, and take over the hotel. Like when I checked into the hotel with you, I couldn't believe there's so many people with horror T-shirts. Everyone is of that type.
It was
and you're in
a sea of black
and
T-shirts.
yeah, and you're in a fancy hotel where you've never seen that happen. And so for me, that was it was fascinating. And I have never really felt around fans in that sense from maybe middle America rather than New York or LA, which is a very different fan base,
Yeah.
And they're just like pure fans. They're not all wanting to think more. Like they're not necessarily the people who are on all the websites. It's people who just go to horror movies and love everything
Yeah.
to do with
Yeah.
it, which is cool.
That was the first time I'd seen the hotel staff get in on it. Like everyone at the restaurants was all dressed up as the Michael Jackson Thriller zombie. And, when we checked in, the girls at the counter. So that
Everyone
was
seemed
neat.
cool.
Everybody got into the spirit of it.
Yeah. It was
it's
an
fun.
amazing weekend for Fango too. Like we had so much fun at the booth, and I'm sure Elric and Rob would have had they been there and not really hungover.
It was so funny.
We were there
You guys were there for
We
a while.
wandered in, and Bekah and Chris Alexander at some point both go, okay, we have to go do panel, and they just walk away.
They left us there.
And no one told us how much things
This
were.
is when we were starving
where
and about
put
to
the
die.
money.
Another reason we couldn't go to get food.
And
We
I
were
was just
stuck at
people
Fango.
coming up to us asking, how do I subscribe to Fangoria? And I'm just looking at them thinking, how
I have no idea.
It was a very...
We
But
had
actually, at
Brian
one
there to
point-
help you guys
No,
out.
he was
Brian,
gone.
he
No,
was
he was
too.
gone. No one was
Brian
there.
was gone want to.
There was
being
like
raw.
an hour or two that it was just us,
Yeah.
and like somebody would come up and be like, "Hey, when's Gore Zone, 34 coming out?" And Elric's like, "I don't know," and then he's like, "You know what? I'm going to make it up from here on out."
Yeah.
So anytime anybody asks,
Sold
he's
out.
like,
Sorry, sold out.
2 weeks. It'll be 2 weeks from now.
It's coming out tomorrow.
2 weeks from today.
You just missed it.
I have presents for you guys.
Oh, woo.
Because whenever I do conventions, I always take like little Scrabble tile jewelry that I sell. Like I make it while I watch TV and I sell it at the booth. And I was like, I'm going to take some for them and present them to them during the Killer POV show that we do in Texas. But Dave didn't realize that I had made some specifically for you guys. And so he put them out
And
on the
sold
first
them.
day. And someone purchased Rob's Shelley Duvall necklace.
Oh, Shelley Duvall.
So
And
now
I
there's
was
two
like-
of these in the world?
I was like, seriously, Dave, someone sold,
I
someone
didn't even need to
bought
look at mine to know
a
what it
Shelley
was.
Duvall necklace. And
I have an E that stands for Isabella Johnny.
Wow.
E for Isabel. You know I love
But
it.
then
it's
it's
Shelley
from
Duvall from The
Possessions.
Shining, of course.
yeah.
All right.
So,
wow. Thank you.
Yes,
That's amazing.
I know. They're all types of fans, so you must wear them always now.
I'm glad that there's another fan out there that
This is the
understands.
thing David Carradine used.
I don't even.
I thought it was some,
Terrible.
I thought it was some sort of suffocating cough.
They're horrible.
Anyway,
So yes, now you must wear them
Thank you very
always.
much.
And speaking of The Shining, you were at the Stanley Film Festival. How did that
my
go?
gosh. Well, aside from being deathly ill, it was amazing. So right as Dave and I were stepping on the plane, he started sneezing and I looked at him and I was like, you better not be freaking getting sick. And by the first night we were there, we both had fevers and it was flu, but it was that type of flu where like everything aches and you're completely wiped out and you're kind of delirious. So a lot of the weekend was a wash for me, but I did go to all the screenings. I just sat in the back and coughed the whole time. So sorry if it's now called the Bekah virus that has swooped over all of Colorado.
and it's kind of far away, right? Like the hotel is like almost an hour
I
drive.
think that's why, because I mean, I've worked through illnesses before, but you get off the airplane in Denver and you're at 5,000 feet. And then the hotel is at about, I think it was like 77,000 feet or 7,700 feet. You get off here at 5,000 and then you're at 7,700 by the time you get to the top of the mountain. From the Denver airport, it was probably a 2-hour drive, an hour of it being just straight up the side of a mountain. And so I've never been in like 7,000 feet elevation.
You've never been to
before.
South Africa?
No.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it was very different. Like it was much harder to breathe. And I don't think that's just because of the flu. But so that kind of made it worse. Like I kept getting nosebleeds, which I've never had before. And I can only assume that's because I had the flu at, 7,000 feet. It was pretty insane. It was kind
And
of
this is the hotel, and this question could be for our first, a good way to intro another person who's part of the roundtable, Joe Maddery, who you might remember from our Lance Henriksen discussion.
I thought you weren't going to introduce me, and I was like, they were all going to think that one of you was schizophrenic.
Yeah, no.
Every now and then, this other voice
I
comes
have
in.
a Stephen King question, so I'm going to. And now this is the hotel that Stephen King was inspired by. Wasn't used at all for Kubrick's, or was an exterior?
It wasn't used for Kubrick's.
And
it was used in the
McGarris.
Mick Garris version. Yeah,
but
pretty
it's where
extensively.
Stephen King wrote it. And I've been told that some exteriors were recreated, like the exteriors from this hotel were recreated for The Shining, the Kubrick one.
I thought the
It's all in England.
I thought the facade for the Kubrick version was actually up in Oregon.
It probably is.
It looks pretty different from the Stanley. I haven't actually been to the Stanley, but I've seen the
It's
pictures.
lovely, and man, they just bilk that Shining stuff. But yeah,
it's always
that's
called
the
the
weird thing
Stanley?
because,
Well, if you're up in the mountains in the middle of nowhere, you got to.
Yeah.
So that's
get
pure
people there
coincidence
somehow.
that it's called the Stanley.
I don't know.
It has nothing to do with Kubrick.
I,
That's
it's
kind of
been
funny.
the Stanley.
Because they keep
have-
talking about how they do all a Kubrick film every year. I'm like, well, you're kind of now making it sound like the Kubrick.
Oh no,
rather
they
than-
have they've got pictures, like these really creepy paintings all over the place of this like really old couple who are the Stanleys, and they own the hotel from like way back. So yeah,
So you didn't have any good hallucinations? You were there sick and everything?
No, but my husband ended up, because he was there sick as hell too, and his fever, I mean, like we ended up buying a thermometer because we were so concerned about how high our fevers were getting, and the Saturday night he had 102 fever. And so he ended up writing a script that I'm sure will reemerge later about a guy who is visiting a foreign place and is stuck in a hotel and starts getting sick and starts hallucinating because he's so sick. So,
well, it worked for Stephen King.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think how it started was actually he had a nightmare up there that they went up there for the weekend because he couldn't get any writing done, and it was supposed to be a vacation, and they went up there and he had this dream about his son Joe Hill, who I don't know would have been like maybe 4 at the time, something like that. That he was running down the hallway trying to get away, like the fire hoses on the walls were coming after him. That the fire hose, which I think is actually in the book, and then in the Mick Garris version too, the fire hose with the teeth. And so he had this nightmare, and he woke up, and he just, immediately wrote down. I mean, it's something like, I remember reading a quote where it's like 2 packs of cigarettes later, I had the whole novel outlined.
Now, the hotel itself, at least I didn't think it was creepy. I mean, they definitely kind of made it creepy for the event, and they did a whole bunch of stuff.
Wasn't there a game that went throughout the...
There was a couple of them.
But like a game where you're playing a role in the mystery of the place?
Interactive. When we first got there were these posters all over the town for this missing kid. And so no one's really paying attention to them, but they had them posted in the hotel and everything, and they looked really legit. And then as soon as we got there, those of us who were playing got an email about how this boy was missing, and he was missing from the town. And if we saw him while we were walking around the town, we should let somebody at the hotel know. And it also looked legit. And if you were playing the game, I didn't, but Ryan Turek was for a little bit. But the game was kind of time consuming, so it was harder for the journalists to do it because we had all these different events that we had to go to. But they would tell you things like, go to this event tonight, and you need to find somebody in a trench coat. He was last seen with the boy. And so,
it'd be amazing. Imagine if Blackout took over that Stanley. So if that group Blackout who do the thing where you have to sign your waiver and you have to, and it's all psychological. Imagine if they took over a hotel.
Screw that.
But this one was
that sounds like a mess to clean up, though.
But this one was really cool because the guy who coordinates these, this is what he does for a living, and people pay them to do them for people for like birthday parties or, it's so-and-so's 50th, let's do this. And he researches your life and really like infiltrates your life where, he'll research your Facebook page and find out everything he can about you and find ways to incorporate it into what's going on. So you literally become kind of a participant in this without even really knowing about it. And it's a very, very smart game. So yeah, the people who did it absolutely loved it and thought it was amazing. So if I hadn't been dying, I probably would have
go back next year, or would you be hesitant because of getting sick?
Oh no, I would definitely go back next year because the whole thing, I mean, it was like summer camp for horror nerds Ryan Turek described it that way. And that's the best way to describe it, where it was like, we had all these different events going on. You could go to a seance or you could go to this screening. And the films that I saw there were top notch. There was only a couple that I was kind of like, meh, but other people really liked them. So, and the setting is so isolated that in itself was kind of creepy and kind of just really set the tone.
You have to go back right before they close for the winter to get the full effect.
Right? I think
that apparently is what Stephen King really did.
That's when the Minotaur comes out.
Well, actually, that was the scariest part of my entire weekend was Dave and I, we'd gone because it's kind of spread out over the entire town. And I mean, the town isn't exactly big. It's very walkable. I mean, the Stanley's up on a hill, and then maybe like 1/8 of a mile down the hill is where the town is. And they have a couple of different like little venues set up in the town where they're screening. So there's like one theater that they're screening at, and then they'll have a couple of other events at coffee houses and things like that. And so we had gone to a screening of Blood Glacier, and it was like an 11:30 screening. So it was like 2:00 by the time we were getting out, and we're walking back up the hill to the hotel. And as we're walking, we keep seeing this big movement, this big object moving in the field, because it's just a field, and there's snow, like it was snowing at the time. And we kept seeing this big object moving, and we kept looking closer and closer. And we were like, something's moving definitely over there.
Yeah, it's a steady cam.
And Dave then shines the flashlight on his phone. And what it was this deer elk thing. And it was like the size of a Volkswagen. I have never seen anything like that. And
if you had to choose between the deer or the elk, which would you go with?
I think it was probably, I'm going to go with, it was
New Mexico.
Caribou. It was huge.
Weird.
I've never seen an animal this big, like not in a zoo. And it was easily like the size of a Volkswagen, and I'm not exaggerating. And it was staring straight at us, and it's huffing, and it was maybe 15 feet from us, and we could see like the steam coming out of its nostrils, and it was obviously really pissed at us. And it was the scariest thing that I've ever seen. And it was one of these things where Dave was like, should we run? And I was like, I don't think we should. And so we turned off the flashlight and just kept walking away. And apparently we got away from it. But yeah, that was shocking. So.
And I know you said just tell people the title, because I know we don't have time to go into every film. But the title of the film that you said was the standout.
My favorite
was from
one,
a great country.
It was from a country, I'll say that. No, it was from New Zealand. Housebound was my favorite by far. I also really liked Ragnarok, was fun. And I liked Blood Glacier, though Dave didn't, so mixed reviews. But I really liked that one. It is streaming on VOD right now. If you are into Shaw Brothers, you should definitely check out Rigor Mortis. I did not enjoy Takashi Miike's new film, Lesson of Evil, and I didn't like the guy.
He just made 7 films while you said that.
I know.
So he does not care.
It wasn't good for me. But and then I also saw Nacho Vigalando's new film, Open Windows, and I didn't enjoy that one either.
Yeah, people describing that to me, I mean, Time Crimes to me is like a modern masterpiece.
It is.
And when people describe the new one with Elijah, I just go, oh dear.
And Sasha
it's
Grey.
all on a computer screen. And I'm like,
yeah.
That does not grab me.
It was not my cup of tea. And I did not get to see Starry Eyes because I was booked in another screening at the time. It was screening simultaneous to Ragnarok, which I really wanted to see. But everyone said it was amazing.
Cool.
So,
I want to see that one too.
We have to thank Jennifer Lovely.
Oh, yeah.
These are big announcements for us because they take a little bit of work, but but for one person, Jennifer Lovely is going, you guys have kind of demanded it not demanded it, but asked, do we have any master list of all the titles we've been watching?
No.
Obviously, that it's far too much for us to go back and listen to ourselves that many times. But Jennifer has been listening to them. We're up to I think she sent me up to episode 20, and I've been posting on a Tumblr, which you'll be able to find on our Facebook account. And we have a list of every title ever. And at first I was like, yeah, I could make a picture for every title. And the first one sent me, I think there was like 150 titles or something. I mean, it's just insane. Obviously, it'll be more at the start. So
and I'm sure we have repetition. Like, how many times have we
Oh,
mentioned?
yeah.
Like,
she's got a little
Freddy's
running
dead.
counting meter next to Possession, I think, where she's
really?
like
That's
6
great.
times, 7 times. And then
fun.
It's like
also
a drinking game.
and so we're trying to take over the internet. So Bekah has also started a Pinterest account
For us, yeah.
that we will all kind of throw in with our favorite stuff and images.
But I've been having fun with it because I've got like rare movie titles, and then I'm doing like books we like and things like that.
Yeah, that'd
Cool
be fun.
shit.
So if you see anything from me and Rob on that, you'll know that Rebekah did that.
Yes.
And that we had no input in that. No,
Elric really likes
we will look at Pinterest.
Finding Neverland and True
Yeah, where did
Beverly
that come from? I
Hills.
was like, how did Finding Neverland? I saw Finding Neverland in the titles, but I actually realized, I said, she said it was me, and I said, I bet you we mentioned that film because we were probably talking about Mark Forster having directed the zombie film,
Right.
World War X. I can't think of any other reason World War Z.
It has to be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's our thanks for the day.
All right, thanks. I saw a couple of quick things. I'm going to be super quick about them. Ready? Listen to this. Final Exam. I have Rebekah's copy of Final Exam.
It's incredible.
Did you
Which I
like
will,
it?
No, it's terrible.
It
It
was
is a
so
terrible,
boring.
terrible movie.
What's the
I
guy's
should
name?
get that
Wolfman? No,
copy.
what's the crazy guy?
So wait, so while I was in Colorado, I had Elric checking my mail, and so Elric
anything that came
opened,
in anything in a Scream Factory package.
Anything-
he
Came from
opens.
Scream Factory. I opened it.
and so somehow like all of my DVDs have been circulating and not made it back to me yet. So
Oh yeah. He's like, I just got Rebekah's Final Exam. I was like, oh, I'll take that next.
I should have opened Dash's birthday
You
presents
should have
this
done that.
weekend
You
while
missed
I
it. You
was
missed
feeding
out.
your cat.
But no, it's really not a good film.
No, and you
it
talked
has
about it, I think, the
Wildman. Is it
last time?
Wildman, the crazy blonde guy?
I don't know.
It feels real, but it's not. I've never seen less motivation in my life for the killer. Nothing is explained in that film. They don't
Nothing,
even
and
say,
it's not-
there's a killer loose. They don't even go there. It's just some dude's doing it. And
Yeah.
you have no idea
Although,
what it means.
it's funny because I didn't realize that it was from about 81 or so. So it was kind of at the beginning of the whole slasher thing. But when everybody looks down on the slasher genre, like I know Rebekah's not a fan of slashers in general, this is why.
Right,
Because
right.
this is like as bland as it gets.
Yeah.
People getting
Unstylish,
killed for no
badly
reason.
paced.
A killer that is just like a dude in denim that
Yeah.
I don't get it. And like they don't even like try to like hide him. He's just like a dude.
Reason enough for another drunken debate episode because Brian Collins loves it.
Are you
Oh,
kidding?
well,
With a
is
passion.
love the right word? Because I read his article he wrote an article for Badass called In
Okay.
Defense of.
Right.
But as I was reading it, I'm like, I don't think he's really defending it. He's pointing out everything that's terrible about it.
Okay.
And maybe that's what makes it stand out. But here's why I want to talk to him is because he ordered the novelization from
My God.
from Amazon.
That's insane.
Was that actually shot on film?
I think
Exam?
so. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it had to have
It
been,
wasn't
right?
a video, but
No,
no, it
it
looked pretty good.
definitely
Some of the
looks
shots look pretty
good.
good, like the basketball scene. It's
Yeah.
the only professional looking kind of moment of the film where.
Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
as you said, it's you
But
know,
it's Shout Factory, Scream Factory, and so it's
good
kind
for
of
them
cool.
for putting
It
it
is.
out, yeah.
I like that because
I don't know.
one day they'll do something that like I love that no like I always kind of have a Mutilator. It's not a good movie. It's really not a good movie. But if that came out right now, I'd buy it because
Yeah,
I
on
remember
Blu-ray.
watching it, going, "Oh, that was cool."
I will reprieve them because they also released Evil Speak, which I
That's
fucking
true.
love. And last
I don't
night I
know
went
Evil
to the
Speak.
signing
Need to see
at
Evil
Dark Dell. I went last night. So
cool. Clint Howard in the house.
Yes.
Was that the new one you saw, or did you see it?
No, I also saw Contracted finally on Netflix.
And what did you think?
Review it in depth. I want to hear everything.
Yes.
I don't want to get in depth, but I did not like it at all.
What?
Yeah.
But we had the guest on the show.
I know.
You can't have had a guest that you didn't like one of their movies. Come on. That's impossible.
This is America. I could say whatever I want. That's number one.
You're wearing a Ronald McDonald shirt, and you can't.
It's not Ronald. It's Pennywise.
Right.
I can say
far more disturbing.
I absolutely, the director's a great guy. He's phenomenal. I'll have him on again. But I didn't.
What's his name?
Yeah, I like.
I'm going to challenge you right now. What's his name?
I like Eric. I don't know if he listens or not. Look, it wasn't for me. I think he's got a good visual eye, and he's not a bad director. Because I've seen a few things he's directed. The script wasn't there at all. And honestly, I can't believe that Ryan Turek gave me shit for putting Larry Fessenden latest movie on my top 10
That's right,
last year.
Ryan really liked it. Contracted was
but
one of his
he put Contracted on his top 10, so I don't know how I feel about that.
That's the cool thing about movies. They're so subjective. But,
there
was something that felt like it was a little too adult. It felt a little out of the league of the experience of that filmmaker. That's what it felt. It felt like Cronenberg could have taken an idea like that and gone, okay, fully developed it. It just felt like you're not fully realizing something. The idea was interesting,
Yeah.
And performances, some are good and some are less good, and that can be a little too much to take.
Right. And on the opposite spectrum, I also finally saw Almost Human by Joe Begos, and actually, I kind of loved it. I thought it was pretty solid. I mean, for what it is, it can't compete with, big budget like Conjuring style stuff, but it's a low down, dirty, straightforward, low budget. It's what I expect from low budget horror films. It's like
the last 20 minutes are a lot of fun.
Yeah, the last third of the movie
good gore,
just is wonderful.
And what, Graham Skipper, I mean, we've had him on before. He's a friend, but he's really great. He's really good in it. And sometimes you wonder, because he's more of a theatrical actor, like, can that transcend? And I think he's good in both mediums. And I'd watch another whole movie with him if they did a sequel or anything.
Well, in their Q&A, me and Joe were at the Q&A, they're pretty upfront about if there's scenes with that. I feel like padding at the start. They're like, we don't know. We just want to get in. And they just had these. We were unfortunately saw a projection that was like messed up, and it kind of repeated the first few minutes a couple times before getting into it. But the last 20 minutes are a lot of fun once you're in the guts of the film. And Graham, when it all becomes kind of Graham, and the reaction shot, which is definitely
it's great.
Which you have to go watch this movie before we can reveal what that is.
Even with the padding, I understand those scenes. I still think it moved super fast. Like, it was a really fast moving movie.
Oh, it is short.
It's
pretty short.
Yeah, so that one I recommend highly.
I only saw one new film because I've been traveling a lot. It was 100 Bloody Acres. I got shit on Facebook about changing my accent from talking to Sharni, but they missed the fact that I was making fun of her before we started recording. So. No, it was on Netflix streaming.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't take it. It was on Netflix streaming.
My house while you check my mail.
I think it's a comedy horror in the vein of it's a redneck comedy horror in the vein of Tucker and Dale versus Evil. It's not as good as Tucker and Dale versus Evil, because what Tucker and Dale versus Evil did, it's Australian for one. What that film did is it's kind of satirizing and flipping the two guys you think are going to be the killers. They're the ones who keep, getting kind of done bad things done to them, and are kind of apologetic and really nice guys. And this one is pretty straight. It has a couple of fun scenes. The gore gags are fun. It's a fun film. I think anyone who's like comedy / horror first, not horror comedy, if that's what your bent is, I think it's definitely worth watching on Netflix streaming. That is not my bent, and so for me, I was left a little like, It has the big guy, Angus Sampson from Insidious 1 and 2, one of the Lee Winnell's partner, the detective.
Right. Yeah.
He plays a big, threatening, because I never really knew the origin of that guy. I guess he's just this Australian actor who they're probably old friends with. I kind of wondered, there's a couple moments where the blood, for no reason, is like CG. Like, just it's a little bit shooting up on their face, and it's just so clearly CG. And other parts where it's fine, where you're like, why would you do that? It just ripped me out of the moment of the film. But it's also got some really funny gags that are actually really good. This film is a film that most people really liked. I think Brian Collins really liked. Some people I've talked to, so that's why I checked it out. And it's definitely not bad. It just, for me, is maybe a little underwhelming. I think Tucker and Dale vs. Evil is actually really funny.
Yeah,
I think it works really well. And I hope that guy, makes another horror film.
Yeah.
I don't think he has.
It's supposed to do a sequel. No, actually, he directed the...
something big.
He directed the pilot to Zombieland that was on Amazon.
That didn't do so well. But anyway, so that's on Netflix streaming right now if you want to see it after my rave review.
Excellent.
As is Contracted. Contracted is also just hit Netflix streaming.
Yep.
So make your own mind up.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
All right. Well, now we're going to talk to our guest of the night. Who directed Jason Lives. No, I'm just
I have something to tell you, Elric.
Ooh.
No. You know how a couple days ago you and I were having lunch and I was like, one of your friends is from Charlottesville. And I know he's from Charlottesville. And you kept saying, I don't know who it is. I don't know. It's Joe.
Oh, that's really funny. That's right. We were. She was even looking at her phone up
like,
every person I
I'm
knew.
going to find him because I know I've had conversations with somebody at your damn
funny.
parties and they're from Charlottesville, which is the town that Dave is from in Virginia.
They're key parties, by the way.
And yeah. And then I saw his face when he walked in tonight, and I was like, he's from fucking Charlottesville.
He's the
and
one.
Of course, look at that face.
I know, it just screams Charlottesville.
If you didn't hear our Lance Henriksen one, we should give you a quick intro because you wrote the biography, Almost Human, with Lance, about Lance's
Not bad
life.
for a human.
Not bad for a human, sorry. Not Almost Human. You
Get it right, pal.
He also made my favorite documentary about horror film as a whole genre, Nightmares in Red, White, and Blue, which I've liked for a long time. Guilty on both counts. And now, a new book.
Yeah.
Yes.
What is this new book? We're talking about it for our guest.
It is, apparently our guest just texted me. He is outside. Do we want to
Let's go
set him up?
grab him then.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if there's dirt and we need to, dig up on him right now, get that out of the way.
Will you tell me what the title is, and then we'll take a break. What's the title of the book?
It's A Strange Idea of Entertainment, which any Jason Lives fan will recognize immediately. And it's an extended Q&A with Tom McLoughlin, who wrote and directed that film.
Cool.
Along with a lot of other films. In these circles, this is probably what he's best known for.
Yeah, probably. Even though One Dark Night, we talked about a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
I don't know how easy that is to see.
Rob said he wants to talk a lot about Meg Tilly.
Yes. We're going to get right to that.
I have a girl I want to talk about. All right, well, we're excited.
We'll be right back. Let's go grab him.
Yeah.
Excellent.
We're back, and our guest has joined us as well. He's a director of some fine films that I'm sure you guys love. One Dark Night for me because I love Meg Tilly. So thank you. That was one of her first films, I think. So, yes, thank you for bringing into feature films. And, of course, Jason Lives, Friday the 13th 6, which is one of our...
Top three. Undebatable. Top three of Jason films, undebatable.
Listen, top three when you have 12 movies is pretty darn good. There's good odds.
As long as they come in two, so I know I don't care who's one.
Yeah, you're up there.
Welcome to Tom McLoughlin.
Hello, guys.
All right, who's wearing a kick-ass Battle Royale t-shirt, by the way.
Yeah.
So more reason to love him. But he's here with Joe Maddery, who we were talking to before, where we ended on Meg Tilly. But what I want to start in, because I'm the one of the three that's actually read most of the book at this point.
You read it on the plane, right?
I did on the way to Texas. And it's really, really fascinating. I mean, I didn't know any of this stuff about Tom, other than he created She-Wolf of London with Mick Garris. The typical nerdy stuff that horror fans know. But I mean, all the stuff kind of prior to directing is just really amazing. And I assume that this was the motivation behind doing the book together. This goes back to your documentary, Joe?
Yeah.
Is that when you guys first met?
I interviewed Tom for Nightmares in Red, White, and Blue. And I think actually out of all the interviews, yours was the only one where we ran out of tape. because you had so many stories and it was usually I'm pretty good at redirecting and go, well, that's not going to be in the documentary, so let's just move on. But you're telling me stories about when your band opened for the Doors and studying mime in Paris with Marcel Marceau and all these things.
I do a lot of talking for a former mime. Yeah.
I mean, those first two things you mentioned are like, that's pretty much right at the top of the book. And, so did you know kind of, how did the book idea come about? Because the way it's structured, actually, it's different than most bio books. It's actually 10 lengthy interviews or chats that you had with him. So it's kind of in question-answer format, which, I don't know, to me, makes it a faster read because I just feel like I'm reading a magazine article or something as opposed to a book. So how did that kind of come to be?
I don't know. I was actually thinking about this week and trying to figure out when we first started doing this, I can't remember if we were talking about a book from day one or if it was really just me going, I want to know more about these things that you brought up in this interview.
Well, I recall you saying, has anybody ever done a book on you? And I go, why? I mean, that made no sense to me. And he said, what? But you've done so many of these weird things before you got to direct. And I went, yeah. And I said, so? And he goes, I don't think there's a lot of people that went that course. I mean, as opposed to the normal film school and, PAing and all this stuff until you finally get a shot at directing. But, I would take any job there was, to get close to it. And until I finally was able to, get the position.
No, I mean, the first thing that you did in the entertainment industry was you were in a band. And your band seemed fairly successful from what I read, playing on the Sunset Strip.
He's still in a band.
Still in a band. Not that band, though, from the beginning.
Sort of,
Oh,
yeah.
is it? Is it
Yeah.
one of the same
Still the
people?
same
Get
guys?
out of here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's part
pretty
of the weird story too about, that turning point in my life, but I guess we should save that for a little bit.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't even realize.
He's not up to that part of the book, so that's a spoiler. So dial it back.
Yeah.
Just gave away the ending. That's
Yeah.
it, and we're done.
Man. But so you were in a band up until what, about 19 or so?
When I was 19, yeah. That's when everything started to get really ugly here in L.A. And the rock and roll scene, mainly because all of our heroes were dying.
Right.
Jimmy went, Janice, Keith was already gone, Keith Rell from the Yardbirds, and of course, Morrison. And it was just, and then the scene had gotten very psychedelic. And I think I don't even know if this is in the book, for about 2 days I was with a group called Blue Cheer. And they had Summertime Blues, and I went into a rehearsal, and everybody was on speed, and it was, and I just went, I don't know if this is what I want to do. This is not, I came out of the rhythm and blues and that whole thing, and it just was getting ugly. And then about that time, I saw a thing about a mime class in Los Angeles, and somebody had asked me many times when I performed on stage, did I study mime? And I didn't even know what the word meant. So I said, well, I might as well check it out. And I seemed to have an aptitude to it. And I thought, this can make me different from Jagger and different from Morrison and stuff, is that I will have this physical training, be able to do things on stage. It's not just dancing.
Right.
And so I went, I was going to go to Paris, and Marceau came here, and then he invited me to go. I had no money, but I, took my one and only straight job working in a drug warehouse. And guys in there were taking the drugs out of boxes that they shouldn't have. So the whole place got busted. I suddenly got to be made foreman, and they thought I was going to be with the company for the rest of my life. And I was there for 6 months and then went, sorry, guys, I'm gone. And on a plane to Paris and, did The Starving Artist in Paris. And that was the days when the student riots were going on. We went from one riot, on the Sunset Strip and things to the Paris riots.
Was that like 68? Or?
That was 69 and 70.
Yeah.
And it was a hell of a time to be there too, because it was, they were just discovering the San Francisco scene. So suddenly all the, psychedelic lights and things were going in the shows, and it was amazing. I mean, it was just a great time to be.
I've seen the footage where they boycotted Cannes that year.
Yeah,
and it's like Godard and Truffaut and all these directors going, "We will not show our films at Cannes," and they're pulling in all other directors. And I think Milos Forman was pulled into it, and then later he went home and he said, "I didn't know what they're saying because I didn't speak French." And he's like, "I totally disagreed with everything they stood for," and he's really mad about it. So it must have been an incredible time. Was that a time where you were also getting exposed to cinema, or did that come later?
Oh yeah, no. The great thing is there is a theater literally across. I was at a place in the Montmartre district called Hotel des Arts, and literally, if you walk out the front door, there was a Cinematheque, and it changed movies 3 times a day, and it was silent movies, it was international movies, obviously American movies, and anytime I wasn't, learning dance, fencing, acrobatics, mime, I was in there just getting as much as I could, and it was just incredible. I mean, because from sundown to sunset, I was always doing something that just kind of fed the artist. And on Sundays, I go to the museums. And again, this is I was a kid who didn't strip for gym. I had no interest in doing any of this kind of stuff. I was, rebellious. I got kicked out of 7 high schools because I wouldn't cut my hair because of the band. And, girls are supposed to have their skirts, 3 inches below their knee, and guys, their hair couldn't touch their ears. So it was, it was always about rebelling to the way you looked and what you believed in and stuff. So it was suddenly going into a whole thing of being exposed to art and artists and musicians. And I mean, it was just a great period. So then I, of course, came back to the States, had no money, and had this craft that I could do. The band all broke up and things. So I ended up on the streets with a hat down, as a performer. And however much money I made that day is how well I ate. That night, and, took buses. And I mean, it was, I kind of loved it in that you didn't have anything to lose. It was all about, hey, I did really good today. I got, more quarters and nickels, or I got actually a couple of dollars. And sometimes somebody put a 20 in there and you'd go, wow, they must be really rich. And it was just kind of incredible way of kind of being a fantasy character, which I think you see on the back of the book is that the tramp character. That's how I dressed.
Oh, wow.
And so it was just like, you couldn't hurt me. I just was kind of this guy that was, in his own little world, and I had magic bits and mime bits and stuff, but it was all silent. So I wasn't really the Marcel Marceau, invisible walls and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Were there other mimes? Like, was it competitive on the street, or were you like all along?
Mimes claiming street corners.
Right, yeah.
No, this was just as, I don't know if you remember Robert Shields, who was up in San Francisco. He actually was over in Paris for a short while, as was Jessica Lange. And
That's right. I knew she studied there.
Yeah, she was with Etienne Decroux. I was studying with him as well. And Lorraine Newman from Saturday Night Live was there as well. But no, there wasn't. I mean, it was... like when we perform at the County Art Museum in front, people had no idea what it was, but it was fascinating because it was something they hadn't seen before. Mm-hmm. And then it took about 3-4 years, and suddenly they were everywhere. And then what I call the death of mime was Tootsie, when Dustin Hoffman pushed that mime and he fell over, and the place went, roar! I went, that's it. It's over. They hate everybody. It's got a white face, and that was the end of at least the street mime stuff.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. But by being a mime, I read in the book that you formed a comedy troupe with other mimes.
Yeah.
And through that experience, you were able to write for the Dick Van Dyke Show, get a part in that, and then also just through your miming experience. I read this great story about how you met with Woody Allen, and you're one of the robots in Sleeper, which is my favorite Woody Allen movie, which is amazing. I told Elric, and he couldn't believe. I told him you were the Beast in The Prophecy.
That one we're not going to just gloss over. That I want to go in Frankenheimer's.
The one that I was most excited about was, I just discovered this before the show, that you were the Jabberwocky in the Alice in Wonderland miniseries that played on TV when I was a kid, and that just totally made my day, because that scared me so badly when I was a kid, because I'd seen like the Disney Alice in Wonderland, and there was also like a Scandinavian one that I'd seen, but they're all very sweet. And the scariest thing is maybe the Mad Hatter. And then I remember being a kid, and out of nowhere comes this like fucking dragon looking thing, and you're like, holy shit, this isn't Alice in Wonderland. And I was telling him before, the other scene that disturbed me so bad was that miniseries had the scene where Alice takes the baby from the evil women, and it turns into a pig. And that scene was also freaky, but the Jabberwocky was where it was at, because that
Beware of the
such a
Jabberwocky.
scary
I
thing.
haven't seen that since I was a
gig?
kid, and I remember the Jabberwocky scene as being kind of like in Curse of the Demon, like that kind of image.
I remember it being very dark, and you see him moving through this. Freaky stuff.
How'd you get get those first gigs doing anything in costume, like basically being a man in suit?
Well, it was one of those, as I said, I'd take any job, what time do I need to be there? Is lunch included? How do I take a bus? Whatever it was. And that's kind of how the Woody Allen thing happened, was that he was looking, he heard Kubrick had used mimes for the Monkees in 2001. So when they came up with this robot idea, they were looking for mimes to be in, these robot costumes. And so, it was just an interview, and it was amazing because he was like my hero at that point, would take the money and run, and Bananas. And he was the most, shy, nervous. We were in a room with a pool table, and he just kept his head down, pushing pool balls around, and he's, it's going, show me what you do. And he was sort of kind of watching out of like the corner of his eye, and then he goes, I can't do this. Look at this. This is ridiculous. And every time you look at this, I look around like there's somebody else in the room he's talking to. It's just him. And, and I said, it's okay, the way I'm doing it, you could do it, differently. And it's like, I don't know why. So we talked about it, and his being a little more of a staccato type robot, while we were all kind of moving smoothly. And I didn't know if I had the gig or not. And suddenly it was like, yeah. And then everybody else that were kind of my friends, and, the woman that was eventually going to be my wife, who was a partner in LA Mime Company, we all got, hired. And it was the job from hell, because they fitted the masks off of mannequins. And maybe a lot of people don't know it. Mannequin heads are smaller than human heads. So they were pushing this plastic, like this, and these caps down there. And guys were passing out, and it was ugly. But as a aspiring filmmaker, I was sitting there watching Woody Allen talk to his AD, say, okay, tell them to do this and this and that. He wouldn't talk to anybody, any of the actors. And
yeah, that's something that you don't get to meet many people who've seen on sets, but it's something I've always heard about him, that he just does not give direction at all.
Yeah.
And so he just casts the movie, and that's his directing. He says he's done.
Yeah.
And that's true. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm really shocked by that.
But then later on, when he doesn't like what he saw, because I was going to do a movie with Mary Steenburgen, and you get a call that, well, we're going to reshoot this, and this, and it's like months later, and it's like, I can't do this now. And it's like, no, that's the contract. You want to work for Woody, So I mean, he's got his set little rules, but God, I admire him. I mean, a film or 2 films every year for God knows how long. It's just amazing.
So even at that point, you had kind of the idea of directing was already there, that wanted to direct films at some point.
Well, it really started, believe it or not. And first off, my father was a USC film student. Graduated in 1949 when you were not supposed to be a film student. I mean, it was like, it
I
was
didn't
a
even
joke.
know they had a film program back then. I mean, I thought that most of them kind of boomed in the 60s.
Yeah,
Wasn't
well,
he the
that's
first
when it really
graduating
kicked.
class?
Yeah, that's why it was such a joke. I mean, Conrad Hall, the incredible DP, was the only person that I'm aware of that kind of came out of that class that went on. But my dad was a vaudevillian performer, magician, a fire eater. He got interested in cinema after he got out of the war, so he had a GI grant and could come out and go to that school. But when he came out, nobody wanted to hire him. He had a 16-millimeter camera and this dream, and he was unhireable. So he continued. Anytime you see I don't know if you've seen Nightmare Alley, the movie, The Fire Eater, that's Dad.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Casbah, Houdini, the movie. Anytime there's a medieval, carnival, anything with a fire eater, that's Pop. And that was the main show business, that he had later on. And so he did have this great love of cinema. He bought a house in Culver City, and in the book you'll see how close our house is to the back lots of MGM. So that's where I played as a kid. And I got an 8-millimeter movie camera. So on the weekends, we made movies in the old back lots. So it was in me at that age, and magic was, because he had all the magic stuff, I could then do shows and make money doing the shows, other kids' birthday parties, and then use that to buy my 8-millimeter film. And you had to send it out, so you only got like half of it back sometimes. Or, of course, it all wasn't there. You ended up shooting with the cap on or whatever. But the love was there. But once the Beatles hit, when I was like 13, that was it. You saw girls screaming. Okay, that's it. Forget magic. Forget movies. I want that. And then that sort of kept the teenage years going. Just the rock and roll dream.
Right. So at what point did you go back to directing? I mean, obviously you had the interest as a kid, and then you were doing a lot of this performing, but at what point did you think, I really want to make that transition?
That's a setup for your Frankenheimer story there.
There we go.
Yeah, for people who don't know about
what
Prophecy,
I really want to do is direct.
It's a very strange mutant monster. I guess it's almost ecology horror, right?
Yeah.
It would come under that.
That's what John wanted, yeah.
Yeah, and Frankenheimer is, a really tremendous director. I mean, sometimes some people would say some of his action scenes in something like French Connection 2 are even stronger than Friedkin's. Some of the driving things. He did Seconds, which is one of the best, I think, one of the best films ever made.
Yeah,
but
Manchurian
tell
Candidate.
Us about how you got involved in this film, and also, I don't know all the stories from this, but I also am very curious what you picked up from directors along the way about just how to be a filmmaker, what that means in a set, like not an indie filmmaker, like what most of us are kind of, going through nowadays.
Yeah, it was a very different education, mainly because my father went through film school and didn't go anywhere when I was interested in film, and that was the only thing we had to talk about and bond together, because he was a very quiet man, but we could talk films and we could go to movies together. He said, no film school. You're not going to learn anything, go out and get a job. So anything I could do, I did. And because of the mime training, obviously the Woody Allen job happened. Joel Schumacher, he was the costume designer or the set tech? I think he was the production designer on Sleeper. But anyway, when he did Incredible Shrinking Woman, he contacted me and my friends. We were the toys. When Lily had shrunk down, we were toys inside. So anytime, it was a monster, a creature, the Jabberwocky, whatever, they were looking for people that had physical training to get in there. So I get this call for this horror movie that Paramount was going to make. That was going to be a huge deal because John Frankenheimer, was directing it. And I went down on the interview, and Tom Berman, special effects guy, had the job of designing all the, what the creature was going to look like. And in the script, it was supposed to be a piece of every kind of animal.
Right.
I told you there's beaver in there.
They're
totally
meant to be everything. Yeah, that's right.
And so the pictures look, I mean, even a great classic Japanese movie could not do this monster. I mean, it was, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, this is going to cost me the job if I say what I really feel. So, I use the old show business. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And you get away with a lot. And so eventually they realized that, no, it can't be all these things. It's just silly. So they ended up, having it be a bear that drank the poisoned water and, started to melt. And we affectionately called it the pizza bear because it looked like, a series of pizzas that hit the side of it. And I had to train for 3 months on all fours with these extenders so I could run like a bear and stand up. And then Kevin Peter Hall, who later went on to do,
Predator.
Harry and the Hendersons.
Yeah. Harry and the
and what was the invisible thing with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Oh, Predator.
Predator.
Yes, thank you. What a wonderful guy. I mean, it was when he died. It just killed me because we were such good friends, and he was so sweet. But
he's the only guy you were ever stuck in a bear suit with. That's a bond.
Well, no, 2 different bear suits. No, Kevin's
not the only guy you were stuck in a bear suit.
Kevin's 7'8" or something,
Whoa.
And me and another guy, Charles Flemmer, who was a dancer, we alternated in the bear suit, which was not fun and a little bit funky. But the whole idea is that certain low angle shots would be us and it articulated, and then the one that Kevin was in, you could just step with it. The face didn't do anything. So it was trying to cut back and forth, between that, to create the illusion. But if anybody ever referred to the thing as the monster, John just blew up. It's not a monster. This is about ecology. This is about pollution. And, I mean, he was very serious about it. And, to everybody else, it's like, it's a fucking monster. So I was pretty young and naive and full of, we all make movies together, don't we? I mean, so there'd be times where John would be setting up a shot. And suddenly, from the back, the guy in the bear suit goes, I think would actually be better, John. And, you get 40 people that all turn and look. And it's like, no, I was thinking, and like the AD would come over and it's like, no, we'll talk about it later. So finally, after about the 3rd time, John pulled me aside and he goes, listen, I appreciate your idea. In fact, one of them I'm actually going to use, but you don't throw out ideas when the director's there. It's just not, that's not protocol. And I go, oh, okay, yes, sir. Everybody else was terrified of him, and he was a force to be reckoned with. But somehow I just felt, I want to be a director. He's a director. We're in this club. So, John, what do you love about directing? It allows me to go fishing. John Sturgis, who I stole his director's chair when I was a kid, me and Mike Hawes from the back lot, and I still have that chair. In fact, it's on the cover.
Wow, that's incredible.
The back end of it. When I finally met John Sturgis, I said, what I stole your chair, and he goes, is that where that fucking chair went? I said, you remember that? He goes, no, I don't. But I said, tell me, what advice can you give a young director? Wear comfortable shoes. Joe Dante said, start on Thursday, so on Friday you know who to fire so you can replace them. So I mean, all the more important things you learn that way. And then I went to this place called Sherwood Oaks Experimental College, which we talk quite a bit about in the book. And that was amazing because, John Carpenter come in and with Dan O'Bannon. And so I learned editing and camera that way. Rod Serling taught a 6-week writing course. That's where I learned to write. As Sid Field was working out his book, which is now the Bible screenplay,
Right. Yep.
We were the guinea pigs, that were talked to. Scorsese came in with Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, a 3-hour cut, that we watched. And he went, okay, what do you guys think? Come on. I mean, you're film students. What should I cut? And we're just like intimidated, John Cassavetes came in with Woman Under the Influence. Stallone came in with Rocky, that we saw.
Wow.
So it was an incredible time, to have.
How long did that place exist?
It still goes on, actually.
Oh, really? What's it called?
Really?
Sherwood Oaks Experimental College.
And where is that?
They now kind of have things that, like the studios, they'll put together these seminars, for writers or directors or actors. And I've been volunteering doing a number of these things because, to me, I owe them so much. And Gary Shuzet, who unfortunately just passed on about half a year ago or so, he was the whole force behind this. He was the madman that was afraid of nobody would go up to anybody and say, do you want to come and talk at my school? And he got everybody in town to do it. It was just amazing. So that's where most of the education came from. And the rest of it was getting on these sets. Disney's The Black Hole, Captain Star. Again, suddenly I was on a lunch bucket, and that was great, And as you know, The Black Hole was just Disney's way of trying to make up for the problem of saying no to George Lucas when he brought him Star Wars.
Right.
But it just, obviously wasn't the same, and you felt it even on the set. But Gary Nelson was a terrific director, and he said, I love what you're doing. We're going to write a part for you. So, I got the Captain Star thing. But everything was sort of like you go in, and I was supposed to sort of coordinate somebody else to do it, like with the Jabberwocky. Mm-hmm. I heard Ringo was going to be in the movie. I said, no, I'll be in the suit. I'll be And sure enough, we have pictures with, my arm around Ringo. And I thought, well, that's the closest I'm ever going to get to the Beatles. So, that was great.
How did you make the first leap to getting a film made? Because I guess things are so different back then. I guess so many people were going through apprenticeships or working their way up the studio system. I don't know if One Dark Night was an independent film or how the money was raised. How'd you get into that position? Because I saw it for the first time maybe 2 weeks ago. I think 2 shows again, and straight away I was like, it's Fulci by way of Stephen King Americana, and I really liked it. Like it feels very, I don't know, it feels like a very innocent, but then fun horror film. It doesn't feel, it hasn't got, I guess it was PG, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's part of it. I think part of it is it doesn't just give you everything. It leaves you, imagining some of that stuff. So I'm curious how you got that start.
You ought to tell the story. You know this better than I do, Joe.
No, this is a long story, actually. I don't know where you're going to start with this
I'll
one.
try to do the cliff notes on this one. I was... I would try to find anything that I could do where I could direct. Most of the credits were, small things, like the Dick Van Dyke thing. I actually got an Emmy nomination for writing sketches on that show that I was also directing. But of course, in television, the director's the guy in the booth that calls the shots. So basically, I guess I would be more of like a writer, choreographer, staging this thing. I had those little clips to try to show people, but it's not a movie. I tried to make some shorts, and they all really weren't particularly horror things. They were comedy because, again, I was so ensconced with the comedy world. But then there was this – I was actually at the Disney Studios when we were doing The Black Hole that I was driving past Forest Lawn, and 2 ideas came together, the mausoleum, and when I was in Paris studying mime, I went into the catacombs. And that was the first time I felt supernatural fear. Where in those days you walked around with just a candle, and you walk with a group, which is cool. But I had to let the group go and be by myself to see what that was like to be with wall-to-wall bones and skulls and go, isn't this? And for the first time I got that, what they talk about, that chill that goes up your back or your neck. And I went, okay, where's the group? Where's the group? And that obviously had such an impression. And these 2 things kind of came together. What if you had this, be alone in the mausoleum, and what if those bodies could somehow come out? So at that same time, I was studying psychic phenomena, ghosts, supernatural. I mean, it's a whole nother chapter of my life, ghost stories and things that I've encountered, which, as I said, that's a whole nother discussion. But that world brought me into the world of psychic vampirism. And I loved that whole concept of, I worked with Bette Midler on Divine Madness, the last part of writing and directing for her. And Bette is the exact opposite of a psychic vampire. When she leaves you, you're like, holy jeez. Quentin Tarantino's like that as well. When you talk to him, when he walks away, you're like, holy shit. I mean, he's got such charisma and energy. It's just infectious. But at the same time, there's those people that sort of drone on at a party, and by they walk away, you're just like, holy shit. They literally drain the energy out of you, and they're fine. And it is a phenomena that we don't know too much about, but, the Russians have been doing a lot of research on this stuff for years. So somehow those 2 ideas came together, and I thought, if there's a guy that had this power, and then he was able to use it to levitate things, but then he overdosed, and then he gets put into a coffin, and then something gets him. Okay, girls got to be in. There got to be girls in there, and they excite the energy, and then suddenly, bang! Out come the coffins out, and then they float down and open. And I didn't want to do walking zombies. I wanted this guy's power to make these corpses stay corpses, but be able to move. the feet dragging. And so Tom Berman, who obviously I met on Prophecy, said, he gave me a letter of intent, to make this thing. Craig Stearns, who did The Fog and Halloween. I took everybody else's credits and said, would you do this movie with me if I get the money? So I had this little, small pamphlet with pictures. I got an actress, and we went into the mausoleum. We took pictures. We got some of Tom's corpses. We put together the music from Amityville, actually the thing that he wrote for Exorcist that wasn't used, that theme. And we did this little slideshow, and we took it every place in town, But it had no blood in it, It was not considered a slasher movie. Everybody was doing slasher movies. So it kept getting, rejected. And finally, I get a call, and there were some Mormon investors in Utah, and they needed a tax write-off. They needed to write off $1 million. They had to start shooting in 3 weeks. It had to be done before the end of the year and be shown someplace to be qualified for their tax shelter, and then they to declare bankruptcy and be done with it. I'm your man.
But you could actually do that because you had like the whole thing storyboarded out by that point because you'd been working on it for so long. I've been doing it so long. So it was like 3 weeks, no problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Is rare.
Now, is that why it's PG? Because they were Mormon investors?
We didn't. No. Actually, all they asked us is, you can say the word God. We don't want any Jesus Christ in there. And, there wasn't any sex in it because there was really no place in that kind of story for it. But they let us smoke dope. All that was cool and things. So that was really it. I was hoping that the gore factor was going to give us the R. I mean, I never even thought about it. I figured, we're going to have maggots and pus, and it's going to be gory and, Exact opposite happened when it went up against the rating board. They went, finally, somebody's not with buckets of blood. We're giving this a PG. And I went, no.
Yeah.
But the exact same thing happened with you with the Jabberwocky. Mm-hmm. Now these producers, major people in this town said, I saw that thing when I was 8 years old. My grandmother took me because it was PG. You scared the shit out of me.
Right.
Because nobody saw it coming. And because it has a very long setup, which drives me crazy how long it takes to get there. But in those days, that's kind of what you did. You set up the premise and stuff. And then it, about the last act, all hell breaks loose. And then it's...
But setup never drags when you've got Adam West in the house. So tell us about Adam West. How was that? And how did he end up in your film? Was he one of the people you met on a different...
No,
film?
Adam, again, I did kind of skipped over this other area where I worked as an actor. Didn't really necessarily want to be an actor, but because of the mime and the goofy face... I ended up doing about 50 commercials. So I got into the whole idea, actors, I respect them. I know what it's like to get in there, the competition and things. So when the casting director said, here's another person for this role, Adam West, I said, Batman? She goes, yeah, I know, bad idea. And I said, wait, why is it a bad idea? She goes, because nobody wants him. I mean, he's Batman. And I go, well, that's bullshit. Bring him in, let's give him this
give
job.
Batman a chance.
Yeah. Now, what I didn't know is that we got on the set, and Adam would come to me and say, okay, Tom, I was thinking if we could take this line and start it up here and then have it come down like this, and then I could sort of vig it up and down, and it would make it far more interesting than just saying the line. No.
Oh, wow.
So take after take to try to just get Adam flat. So I could just get it to sound real. And he did a really good job. I mean, he got that I really didn't want the musicality of it. But after we shot the movie and it's shown in the Bahamas for its tax shelter, and they gave it back and we edited it and made the film that I wanted to make, the company had gone bankrupt. Another guy came in, took over, a guy named Charles Cellier, who did some of the, was it Santa Claus?
Silent
Deadly Night and stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically said, well, thank you very much. And I went, what do you mean? He says, no, we got our notes and things, and so, we'll see you Monday. I go, okay. So come to the editing room Monday, it was gutted. All gone. Everything went to Utah. And it was that first devastation of, oh, my God, I'm nobody. I can't. This is my baby, and it's gone. And they recut it. They brought Adam up. They re-looped some things. So up and down went the voice again, which you hear on there again. And the ending there was no ending. And they just all kind of walked out. And I said, these were the days of Carrie. You had to have some punch at the end, like the friggin', every trailer now has got to have the, credits, then boom, something. Those days it was like you got to have one last jump scare. So I convinced Craig Stearns to give us back parts of the set that he managed to have kept someplace. We got the actresses back, we got the corpses, and we did, that little signature piece at the end, just so it had some, kind of ending to it. But that was begging and borrowing, and Panavision let us use the cameras and stuff so we could at least go out on that. So
it's not your cut that I've seen.
No.
It's the
and
cut.
The thing that...
Worse than Blockbuster.
Yeah. The thing that I really hated when they released the DVD, they had an additional thing called director's cut. It's not the director's cut. That's the editor's assembly, which played, in the Bahamas as Rest in Peace to qualify for their tax shelter. But, when they released the thing, they didn't know what else to call it. So they said, that's it. But at least it has the opening that I wanted, which was, I was in love with this whole idea of see a coroner wagon come, then another coroner wagon behind it, and then another, completely unrealistic. But just that image of all those coroner wagons and the doors opening slowly and all the gurneys coming out, I thought, okay, something is gone on here in this neighborhood. And
would you have the rights if you wanted to redo the film yourself now?
Funny you should say that.
Another long story.
The last 6 years, actually, but intensely the last 6 months of my life has been finding the rights to the movie, because it just bounced from, distributor. If you look it up on IMDb, there's like 13 titles for this movie. Entity Force. Night in the Crypt. I mean, on and on, because every country removed the title, put their own title on it, released it, made the money. None of us, actors, anybody, got any money, after the initial just paid for the gig. So Joe and I have been talking about this, and there's always been this frustration for me that I really felt we shortchanged Raymar, our antagonist. You meet him when he's dead. You don't have any idea about his backstory except a little bit of talk. So I wanted
his eyes glowed in the After Dark way. I thought was cool.
Yep. But I want to keep the same feeling of claustrophobia and the old school. You're in a place and you can't get out, and there's
the psychic vampirism thing I've never seen before.
Yeah.
Even seeing this the other day, I was like, I've never even heard that term. So I feel like this is something you could fully explore.
Yeah. So we have a draft that we're working on, and I just wanted to make sure I had the rights secured and things to do it before you go marching in and somebody goes, excuse me, that's ours. So, and just the idea of being able, after 40 films, to be able to go back and fix your first one more to what you wanted. And we ended up having, I guess, an $850,000 budget because they ended up taking some out. And we did the best we could with that amount of money, in those days. And The Innocents was purely a first film, and, I wanted it to have that gothic horror thing that I've always loved from the Universal horror movies.
How was it received when it first came out?
Actually, review-wise was interesting because Alan Davio, who shot E.T., he came into the editing room, and he was watching some of the dailies, and we said, what'd you think? And he went, when are you guys releasing this? We go, oh, top of the year. And he goes, okay, that's good. Why? He said, well, I was just over at Spielberg's editing rooms and was looking at this film he's doing called Poltergeist. A lot of similar things with the corpses and stuff. And I go, you're kidding. He goes, I mean, not exactly, but that same sort of feeling kind of, So, of course, we got delayed a year. Poltergeist came that great summer with Poltergeist and E.T., and the next January we came out. So most of the reviews went, well, obviously after seeing Poltergeist, they borrowed some of that, and of course anybody in the film industry knows you can't see something and 6 months later have the completed movie out there. But I had to kind of suffer that. But over the years, it has taken on this sort of cozy horror movie. People saw it on Elvira's show, or they saw it someplace, and it kind of represents that. Yeah, it sort of haunted you in the way that I'd hoped it would. But at the time, we had the usual. I don't know what it made the initial opening weekend, but I think it was number 2 to Aliens 2. I think Aliens 2 came out that same time. Wow. And then of course it dropped, and there was no publicity. It just kind of came and went.
I posted on Twitter because I wanted to. I still want us to maybe show 35 of it. And Joe told me you didn't know if there were any, and I posted, and I got 3 different people saying they all 35 millimeter print.
Are you kidding me?
Wow.
Yeah. One has been on the show. Phil has a print.
Phil has a
the
print.
UGF, There's a thing called there's a thing in Austin now, and I think it has something to do with the Alamo, but not quite, where they collect exploitation and horror films, like really good prints, and then they store it in an archive where you can borrow from them. Wow. And I think it's UGF. Somebody will correct me on the name. They were one of the first people because they told me that they had played it there a year ago at a festival.
Yes.
And so that print is still there. So, I mean, I was also thinking, besides trying to do a screen, I was also thinking, look, for remastering a Blu-ray, if there's a great print out there.
Yeah.
Because it felt like a film that should be on Blu-ray, because I felt like some of those great scenes with the like things coming out of his eyes.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of stuff's going to look great.
Absolutely.
Well, I think the Anchor Bay DVD at this point is out of print, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I borrowed Joe's.
Wasn't Anchor Bay?
No,
was
it's not
it?
Anchor Bay. It's
was it?
Shriek Show.
Yeah, it was something I
Shriek
hadn't
did it?
heard
Okay.
of.
Yeah, they usually do limited runs with their stuff.
Yeah.
So would it be possible to do a director's cut or something as close to your original director's cut?
Boy, I would love to be able to do that. I don't know if all the pieces, because there's a lot that was sort of taken out and jiggled around and things. But if you see the one on DVD, for anybody out there that's seen it, it literally is a Frankenstein print. It's because they had no negative, and I still cannot believe they threw the negative away. But they're telling me they can't imagine that anybody's got it someplace. But please, if you know, let us know.
right.
But they tried to find it, but it was done with Movie Lab, and Movie Lab went under at a certain point. And I guess if you didn't come and claim the negatives, supposedly they just tossed them. But I think somebody.
That so-called director's cut that's on that bonus disc, wasn't that was just from a video that you had, right? That's not, that negative doesn't exist of that version somewhere, does it?
I don't think so. Yeah. I think actually no, because we just took the work cut, and I think we just ran a 3/4, and then that's what they took and played. But the guys who put the thing together for the DVD said that they could never find one whole print. So it's all like bits and pieces, and if you watch it, it is like watching a Grindhouse movie in downtown L.A., and it's been on its 90th run with the clicks and the boom and the scratches, and I just hated that. And then I went, wait a minute, that's exactly the way I saw most of the horror movies when I was growing up in those, horrible places where you kept your legs up under your chair because there's rats going under downtown.
There's still a few of those in New York.
Is there?
Yeah, a few places that when I go, I'm always like, don't put your popcorn on the ground. You don't want to do that.
And those rats downtown L.A., they're big.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're like cats.
Big fucking suckers, yeah.
Well, the word is out there, so hopefully we can track that
hopefully
down.
we can do a screening. We'd love to do a Killer POV screening of that film.
Yes.
I feel like it's a film a lot of people haven't seen necessarily. And
I hadn't seen it before the show.
Yeah, so I think it'd be a lot of fun to do something like that.
We did a screening a few years ago at Hollywood Forever for Tom's 60th birthday.
cool.
Oh, yeah. Which
Very
I think
cool.
is your speech is the intro of the book, or I think.
My good friend Stephen Banks.
Yeah, that's it.
Very funny comedian and performer. But yeah, he got up there, and it was like a eulogy for me. It was like I looked out over all these people. I think there's a picture of everybody there.
Right.
Yeah, there is.
And it was like, oh my God, this is it. This is my AFI tribute. This is it. And I'm at a cemetery where I made my first film, and on the other side of that cemetery, Paramount Studios, Stage 16, is where I met my wife, Nancy. Literally across the street was Pierce Brothers Mortuary, where when I was 13, my father took me to see Peter Lorre laid out.
Oh, wow.
Which again, wonderful bonding father-son moment.
Peter Lorre's going to be your neighbor soon.
Yeah, and Peter Lorre, my crypt down there is like just literally like
Oh, wow.
3 feet from
nice.
Peter Lorre. So
I'm
we're all a
looking at
happy
Peter
family.
Lorre's crypt here?
Right in here. Yeah, that little alcove in there's little Peter Lorre and Mrs. Lorre.
Wow.
Mad love.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So I guess the obvious question is, because it was a smaller film and because it had a smallish release and kind of disappeared quickly, how the hell do you go from there to taking over like one of the biggest franchises, especially looking at it from now, but also one that had just come off its I guess weakest entry. Everyone will debate this, obviously, but the one entry that didn't have Jason, and I guess from watching that documentary about the series that you're also in, it was also, I guess, a guy who just come from like doing a lot of softcore and porn and had a kind of a nastiness to the film. How did you get involved, and B, did it add pressure or remove pressure coming after that entry that I get? Because I don't remember. I was a kid who probably started around your one. Is probably when I started getting them all on VHS, But I'd be curious, like, what the mood of that franchise was after that one had come out, and what the pressure is to reboot something and bring back Jason, basically. Because yours has so much imagination and fun, and feels the most self-contained of all the films. Like it's its own little universe or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, my roommate's not a horror fan. I feel like I could show him Jason Lives, and he probably it's the one Friday I think he might actually find.
It's the Jason for the whole family.
Exactly.
So, I mean, how did you even get the gig? Because, I mean, that just seems like a huge jump in terms of exposure.
It's funny because it's almost like Death of a Salesman, the Willie Loman walking around with his suitcases. I had my film cans from One Dark Night, and I would go place to place and leave the film cans and, sometimes come back and, my co-writer, Mike Hawes, would say, always look to see if the little cobweb was connected between the two of them. It's like, what did you think of the movie? Oh, it's great. Yeah, the cans are over there. And so, we tried, and there would always be these like almost deals. And I had one of those almost deals at Paramount, and somehow Frank Mancuso saw the movie, and I don't know if it's the thing he was doing or somebody said you should look at this, because they were trying to figure out, do we try to get any more juice out of this lemon? Or, is it worth it? And, Frank's idea was, okay, if we're going to do it, it's got to be Jason. But he's dead. Okay, well, somebody's got to figure out how to bring him back. And pretty much that was, my marching orders, bring back Jason. And then I said, can I be funny? And he goes, what do you mean funny? And I said, well, can I have a dark sense of humor? And he said, well, you're not going to make fun of Jason. I said, no, he stays the bad guy. But I want people to be likable. I want to be upset when they get killed, in some way. It just felt to me that was fair. And I wanted to have an equal number of guys getting killed to women. I just thought, he doesn't care. You're in his way, he gets rid of you. And then get the mythology back in again that, I think was talked about maybe once around the campfire. And I thought, so I went to Paramount and I watched all of them. Back to back.
Were you familiar before that?
I loved the first one. I saw that and I thought, okay, he took, Sean saw Halloween as we all did and found a twist, with the mother and all that. Then when I saw the second one, I wasn't as enamored. And then it became, they all merged together. There were so many slasher movies. You'd see the advertising as more scary than Friday the 13th, more during the Halloween, and it all kind of blurred. I mean, it really did. Every week there was something because they were doing well, and so I kind of stopped with the whole thing. It was like when we got into torture porn. I watched the first couple and then I went, okay, I'm done.
Right.
I love that idea of being, nailed into my seat with something. I love that's,
rather than watch someone get nailed into a seat.
Yes,
I agree with that.
I love great effects. My brother Jim, has worked for Rick Baker for years and all the effects places. He made Jace the heart. What's his name? Horshack's heart that gets punched out. My brother made that family affair. And so, I love those effects, but it became nothing but that. It's like we got to have things to walk out of the theater and go, yo, remember when his eyes popped out his ears? Yeah. So, I kind of stopped watching them. So here was a chance to see everything. And yeah, when I got to the last one, I went, it wasn't even Jason? Well, geez, So from that, I went, okay, what do I do? So I start my visits to the Hollywood Forever Cemetery under the tree. There's a little documentary that was made for the Friday things that I think you can find on YouTube called Legends Never Die, Hollywood, what's it called? Hollywood Forever. And it basically talks about, writing and shooting One Dark Night there, writing Friday the 13th there. And I just kind of immersed myself into that whole world of like, okay, I want to make, again, a gothic horror movie, except Jason will be the monster, Frankenstein, lightning bolt, boom. It's like the pieces just started kind of coming together. And then, okay, would they keep calling it, Crystal Lake? No, you change the name. We want to forget about that. So Forest Lawn, Forest Green. All right. So all the things just sort of came in. And then, okay, I got a sheriff. McGarris, Sheriff Garris, okay. It was all, homages to people I knew, Carpenter Road, Cunningham Avenue, whatever, Right, yeah. So I just wanted it to be one of those movies where if you were a fan of the series, you'd go, oh, I get it. Oh, that's great. And then at the same time, if you just kind of got sick of it, we were also sort of satirizing it a little bit at the same time, carefully. But I think one of my biggest compliments was years later, Kevin Williamson. I met him for a TV show or something, and he said, I got to tell you, your Friday the 13th had a lot to do with, me writing Scary Movie. And
Definitely see that.
Yeah.
and here's the irony on that. I was sent Scary Movie, before it was called Scream, and I rejected it. And I said, I've already made this movie. It's great. And then I looked at a bunch of other ones, and then I went, okay, where's that Scary Movie one? Too late. Wes Craven's got it. So, bullet to the head. But that was a wonderful compliment because it was kind of beginning. I'm sure other people did it in some form, where you could kind of have fun with the genre. And I broke the fourth wall with some folks have a strange idea of entertainment. That's the brilliant Joe Maddery came up with that for the title of the book. And so, it was trying to make it an entertaining, literally what you said, a film that for $3 million, I'm going to give you a car chase. I'm going to give you underwater fight. We're going to kill a lot of people, but in ways that a human being could not, you can't twist a head all the way around and pull it off, just making Jason super powerful. But I never, ever thought about him as a zombie, which is sort of what has happened. There's the old Jason that was human, and then there's this, fucking McLoughlin made it into a zombie. And then it's sort of like where you stand on that, whether you like that unstoppable or you like them the other way. But for me, it was like kind of a no-brainer. I had to do something that, to me, made it in my sensibilities, which again, Frankenstein, all that, a monster. The cool thing is years later, here we are looking back at the 80s, the way we looked at the 30s and 40s horror movies, Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman. And, each generation goes, God, you were part of the, Freddy and Pinhead and the Stephen King movies. And, and at the time we all felt like posers. The 70s made all the great movies. We were making these, cheapo things the best we could.
But even the cheapo, we always talk about it. There was so much imagination in those films. Even if it is part 7, 8, 9 of something, even in the Freddy films, there'll be something in it that will electrify you. A little dream scene, a little something. And I think that is something we all kind of miss in our generation. Probably post Saw.
Also reverence for what came before. The thing I think that works the best about part 6 is you didn't just say, well, screw all the characters and everything that's been set up. You're like, no, let's take that kid from the last movie that we left off, and he's the one that's going to, kind of keep this movie going. It stays in continuity, which I think a lot of the fans appreciate.
That's a foreign concept now, too, like the idea of a reboot that's true to what came before it.
Yeah,
now it's all about, let's
scrap
start
everything
from fresh and see what we can do and come up with something better.
Even though the original just came out last year.
Yeah, I think it's the Cinefamily. Somebody's doing a screening of the Jarvis trilogy.
Well, you're going to be there, right?
Yes, that is a Cinefamily.
Which is those 3 movies.
Yeah. Were you fans of the previous Jarvis ones, or did you like the story arc of that character? Is that why you kept them going?
Well, my favorite, if you ask me what my favorite Friday the 13th was, other than the first one, was part 4.
Zito. Is that Zito?
Joe Zito.
Yeah, I think that's the best one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Only because it's the most Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If that was a perfect franchise, you would be like, you'd have that. You'd have a kid coming against the monster.
Exactly.
And,
and he, kills him, and, we're all done.
And he knows how to explode glass. Yeah. It's a Joseph Zito film where glass is exploding.
Yeah, I love Joe. He's a wonderful guy. And I said, I didn't want to follow yours. I was glad somebody else had to.
Right.
But I sort of didn't, I kind of pretend like the part 5 didn't happen.
Right.
We tried to get John Shepard, to play Tommy Jarvis, but he had no interest in it. I feel wonderful that we got Tom Matthews because he was just terrific, and Jennifer Cook. And Jennifer to me was everything that the Barbara Stanwyck, characters from the 40s were: brassy, smart, tough. All that stuff that I just loved in terms of those kinds of movies. I wanted to, have these characters.
You had Tony Goldwyn in there.
And Tony, his first movie, got his
cool.
SAG card there with the scene with my wife, Nancy. And, Nancy was hoping, to be one of the camp counselors. And I said, this scene, I promise you, will be I don't know, I was probably lying, but, in retrospect, though, I kept thinking that's the one people always talk about because of the American Express card. And that was another big thing in those days, which was so great, is that audiences would come and they were always yelling at the screen.
Yeah.
There was always a dialogue that went back and forth. So I started with One Dark Night, playing with that, having the character do something, knowing somebody will say something, and they'll get the laugh, and they'll feel great, and their friends will all give them a high five. But it'll be the same joke every screening, right? The guy, and there would always be somebody to yell, "Don't leave home without it." Or in the first movie where you'd go, "Kitty, kitty," there'd always be some joke to go, "Meow." Right. Everybody would laugh. But that was... That to me, that was the thing that was fun about it. Is there, you weren't shushing people. You were sort of like getting into it with everybody.
I remember laughing at, I think it's the only one I've laughed out loud, not at the movie, but at an actual joke, was the Sartre book on the little kid's bed. So you have all these kids, and was it No Exit? I assumed it would be, the joke of just the highbrow, that's going to go over like 99% of your population, but somebody is going to laugh out loud at that.
Yeah.
And it got me.
So you were that one.
I was that one.
That was the biggest laugh when they showed it a few years ago at the Beverly.
Yeah. Because
they roared.
It's like, I was reading that.
Yeah, it's funny. That's just how you never know.
Considering the success of it, because I feel like that put the Friday movies back on track, at least in terms of how successful they were. Did they ask you to come back for 7? Did you have any interest in doing another one? Or did you feel like, well, I did it and that's that? Because I know you left it open for another one just in case.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There were a lot of sort of what the endings were going to be. I'm sure you all heard about I wanted to do Jason's father, and that's in the actually in the back of the book, kids. Another brilliant Joe Maddery idea.
Lovely.
Great incentive to have it is this is your original treatment.
That's the original. That's what got me the job. That's what I sat down and figured out. This is what I think the movie should be. And Frank said, "Yep, that's it. Love it."
It's a lengthy
Pretty
treatment.
awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising no one has gone with the father. I wonder, are they just scared of changing?
Well, what Frank said to me is, it's like, look, we're worried if Jason is even going to mean anything to, after the last one. Let's just make sure that the audience knows this is going to be about Jason. We don't want him at the end going, what? I mean, this could be his father now and not Jason? I mean, he was so concerned about what happened, with part 5 that he just said, no, stay focused on Jason. And I think ultimately he was right. I just love this whole idea of, who the hell, offspring was he?
Who is the father?
Somebody, they'll probably do it in the series. I bet you.
Yeah, I was going to say, they've been talking about that. Like, just some of the quotes that have come out is one of the quotes was the wacky family of Jason Voorhees.
I can't wait to see Stacy Keach in that role. That will be a great sitcom. So you never got, how did they decide that you weren't going to get
So the first thing we talked about, which I really loved, was Cheech and Chong meet Jason. And I just thought, Abbott and Costello, just getting stoned out there, and it could be Jason, man. And
it's no different than Freddy versus Jason. I mean, you're basically the same.
But that's what they wanted 7 to be, I believe, right?
Yeah, and that we were going to do. That Frank and I were talking seriously about. But New Line said absolutely not. There was going to be no collaboration, like that. And the irony, of course, is the New Line got Jason eventually.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was sort of like if Frank was saying to me that he was planning on doing a series with the title, and I really didn't have a lot of interest in doing television, so I said no, but ultimately ended up being story editor and doing a couple of episodes. A couple of them I'm very actually proud of because they were themes that I was passionate about.
We're all fans. I mean, we've talked about the show before here. We're fans of the show. We saw it at a perfect age, when it was on TV, where it was just, it was interesting. It was I mean, the only confusing thing was the title.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, what? But other than that, it was called Cursed
But that's
Objects.
why you watched it.
It is why we watch it. I watch it for the redhead.
Yeah.
But everyone, whatever. So, sorry, not Rebekah.
No. I've actually, Elise has done research into where she is now.
Oh, really?
It's pretty damn
Is she
fascinating.
Canadian? A lot of them were Canadian, right? It was a Canadian production.
The redhead is now married to someone, and I swear it's like Middle Eastern or somebody. She's like married to, I want to say, a sheikh or something.
Oh.
So
she's a princess of some sort.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Kelly.
Yeah, she did well.
I could be off on the location, but yeah, she's definitely like a princess now.
And the lead guy got to be in another Friday 13th. That's about it.
Movie, yeah.
Yeah, very nice guy. And I don't know if Chris Wiggins, I was casting some shows, and he came in on something that I was doing up there, very bitter over no residuals and how well the show did. And it's awful, in that regard of how well so many of these things do, and because of the way the unions are up there, it's like you get paid, that's it, bye.
Wow,
none of that residual thing. But anyway, he looked great, and hopefully he's still around. But
didn't Cronenberg even direct some because
yes,
of the Canada
did.
connection? Yeah. So it's like Vincenzo Natali has recently been directing some of the episodes of Hannibal. It's that same thing. You see it come on TV, and you're like, oh, I wonder why that person. And then you go, oh, it's shot in Canada. It makes sense why some of these people are big name directors. It's cool.
Yeah, you want to hear a really funny thing is when I was story editor on Friday, Frank came in and he says, there's a lot of word about this guy that just had this little independent film that I'd like to see if he wants to come and talk with us, Steven Soderbergh. And, I went, oh, really? Isn't that the one with sex lies and something? Yeah. I said, does he want to do horror? I said, I don't know. We'll find out. We'll bring him in here. Never happened, but it was like that was that time where it was sort of like you went looking for anybody that could maybe bring something different. And that's one of Frank's great gifts is he was always looking for some different spin on things, so it wasn't going to be exactly the same thing.
Huh. And Freddy's, you did some Freddy's.
Yeah,
what is that
Freddy's
show?
Nightmares.
Freddy's Nightmares.
Freddy's Nightmares.
Yeah. I really want to revisit those because
Did you never not get them in New
we
Zealand?
did. No, we
Or
did.
you
But probably a long time later. And I remember them late at night, and I just remember going like, "What the hell is this?" Like as a big Nightmare fan, I remember like just not even understanding what I was. It reminded me more of 976 Evil. Than it did. Robert Englund's still there, but I liked them. There's something fun.
There's something weird about it, especially at the age that we were when they aired. I'd like to revisit them.
I couldn't
now
imagine what
Are
they'd
they
be like.
available on DVD?
No, they're not.
Okay.
Only a few of them were on VHS, and I think one or two of them are on the box set. But I don't know if that's
Chiller
a
didn't
rights.
run them? Wasn't
I think Chiller was running them for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really hunt, you could find them on YouTube.
Did you direct any?
I've
or
definitely
just,
seen them bootlegged
Yeah.
at
Directed them?
conventions.
Interesting.
Yeah, I did one.
With Laura Park Lincoln.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Laura Park Lincoln, who
Part
I
seven.
absolutely
Cool.
loved. She was, and that again, like sort of strange, she was in the next Friday and then worked on this thing. And also, who was the kid who's the big star? He did Hedwig and the Giant Inch.
Angry Inch.
Angry Inch, I'm sorry. John Cameron
Mitchell.
Is that
Yes.
Yeah. And he was in that as well. And it was it was just, we were we had half of a script and I got to sort of improvise all this just bizarre imagery in a hospital. And we were just kind of making up shit as we went along.
Did you guys get to even shoot Robert stuff or Robert Englund stuff?
Yeah.
Or is that, okay.
Yeah. I mean, he would come in and do like block of a bunch of those little intro things so that, everybody kind of had a shot to do something in that regard. But yeah, the shows really were not about that. As you know, they were just supposed to be weird things that went on in Springwood, and kind of depended on the director. But Mick, it was part of that, obviously, and there was a lot of good people that, directed.
That might be an interest. I'd like to know about the making of Freddy's Nightmare. That's more of a...
you're right.
We had David Scow on a couple of weeks ago, and he said the one he wrote was like the one that got edited the most, so like 10 minutes out of it. He's like, it's barely an episode, so...
I have such a vague memory of them. I can't even remember a specific episode.
I remember
really
the intro
need to
as
go
well.
back and watch them.
It's the intros. You remember Robert, obviously, and then it's, I mean, also there was a lot of other stuff on at the time, like the Tales from the Crypt, and then things. There were a lot of other shows like that at that time, I guess.
I feel like Friday the 13th was at that time as well.
Didn't
Maybe
you
a
say
little
somebody
before,
was...
yeah.
It was
It's
the
all-
old
it's all in a
before,
row.
yeah.
It's all in a
Isn't
row.
somebody writing a book about the Friday the 13th series?
Yes.
That you got interviewed for?
Yeah.
that's our friend
yeah,
Elise.
that's who I was just talking about that told me
Our friend
about the
Elise
princess.
Wax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's great.
through Bear Manor Media.
The others, yeah, she is. Yeah, same publishers.
Yep.
The other interesting thing too is that the writer for my episode was Michael DeLuca, who obviously has gone on for big stuff.
Right.
But he was this kid that Bob Shea had around there, who was the one that basically gave him the idea about mutant teenage mutant heroes, and. And he was just so excited about, but the material just wasn't really there, just a bunch of ideas. So, as I said, we improvised so much of it, but some of the imagery and things that I was able to do, I'm really proud of because we had no time. We were getting beaten up like crazy to try to get through this stuff, but, we were shooting on 16 and, barreling through doing as much weird shit as we could possibly come up with.
Is that even on DVD?
What?
All the Freddy's Nightmares.
No.
I want to see all of them.
Mine is on some, but I don't think it's in America, is it?
No, the only ones I've seen are like bootlegs from conventions where you can get them all. But
that's got to be a rights issue. I'm not sure why they were never all released here.
Because I have one that's like 2 episodes in it, and I can't remember who it's mine, which is called "It's a Miserable Life," and then I can't remember what the other.
I thought there were like 5 videos.
Yeah, I have all the VHS ones they put out, but those were just like paired up 2 episodes apiece. Yeah. So getting into TV that way, through Friday the 13th, Freddy's Nightmares, and then later creating She-Wolf of London, which I remember because as a kid I was in love with Kate Hodge. So thank you for making her into a werewolf.
Kate was great.
Yeah. So did this kind of lead into? There's a whole section in the book talking about a lot of the TV movies that you've done over the course of the last several years, working with people like Craig T. Nelson, Kirk Douglas. I mean, so many interesting people. Meg Tilly again. And I didn't know that side of your career, to be honest, because
Why would you?
A lot of
You
times
don't watch Lifetime or
well, yeah, they premiere,
CBS, yeah.
and then it's like, some of them. I was talking to Joe about it. Some of them have gotten DVD releases, some of them haven't. But was that just an extension of doing episodic television? Did that lead to directing TV movies, or how did that come about?
Actually, far weirder than that, my friend.
Okay.
Yeah, the movie that I carried around for years was this romantic fantasy with a angel crashing into a satellite and dumping in this guy's pool, and he finds her and falls in love with her, not realizing she's the angel of death come to take him. And as soon as her wing heals, she has to do the deed because he's actually got a tumor. And kind of based on a true story about a guy I knew who died very young because he was having headaches and he didn't ever take care of it. And suddenly he had this inoperable tumor and it was over. And I thought, God, the guy like that, I mean, it's just unfair. And I thought, oh, maybe God would send somebody as beautiful as Emmanuel Béart, But it was one of those scripts where nobody was doing fantasy. I mean, there was no Splash, there was no E.T., there was none of that kind of thing. So it was like, nope, no, we're not interested in that. At that same time, Warren Beatty was going to remake Mr. Peabody and the Mermaid at Columbia. And that was the only one that was sort of like, well, let's see how that does and things. And it, kind of went on. And in the meantime, I did the Friday and, did whatever other gigs I could get. And finally, after Friday came out, Dino De Laurentiis, and it was like a little mafia thing. Dino, Frank Mancuso Jr., all at Dino's house, all with cigars, talking about the kid. Yeah. So Dino had this studio, DEG, and he throws this New Year's party, and it's like Friedkin, it's David Lynch, it's Bruce Beresford, Peter Bogdanovich, I mean, and then me, who does not fit here. Later, Sam Raimi, came in when he did the second Evil Dead, Army of Darkness. So it was this kind of, Dino had a whole bunch of us as part of that thing. And then when his company just fell apart and Date with an Angel got no publicity and the whole thing was called a copy of Splash, which of course, broke my heart. Everything just sort of like went boom down on me. And then it was, the Freddy's, the Friday series and stuff. And then I was offered a Stephen King thing from Dino. Sometimes they come back. Mm-hmm.
Which I remembered, we had Mick here, and I remembered that being theatrical in New Zealand, Australia, but here it was TV or miniseries, right?
Well, again, very cleverly, we shot it, what do they call that? Super 35. So we had to frame it for widescreen scope and then also watch the framing for television. So certain things just really look wonky, and you're always trying to adjust for somebody's tie or some stupid thing. And there wasn't that much difference in the gore thing with the faces and whatever. But Dino released it overseas as a feature, and then CBS released it here. And CBS loved the way how it did, and they offered me this miniseries in A Child's Name with Valerie Bertinelli, who I'd never even heard of, because again, I was not in those circles. I was a genre person. And, miniseries, I don't know. I mean, and I read the script, and I said, well, it's an interesting story, but I don't know what I can bring to this. But I thought, well, why not take, I fail and I go back and, do another horror movie. And much to my absolute shock, still to this day, that thing was the number one movie that year, which I guess was 91. 91. And suddenly I'm in the TV movie world. I went from, just another genre director to I was in the top 3 guys who you would call, to see if you wanted to do it. So, Robert Halmey's offering me this, huge miniseries, $9 million miniseries called The Fire Next Time. And I was then offered this thing about AIDS, the first woman who was, got sort of famous for being contracted AIDS, Alison Gertz. And, I had to sort of decide between the two, and it was the big movie, the little movie, and then it was like Halmey went, no, you do the little movie, now you come do my big movie. Great. So now I'm ensconced into that world because both things did well. And I had to make a choice of, do I spend 3 years trying to make one movie, or do I do 3 movies a year? Because that's sort of, with the pace of those things, and the fact that I literally for many, many years, I'd get a call on a Thursday. We're sending you a script. Read it tonight. If you like it, let me know Friday. You're on a plane Saturday.
Wow.
And I mean, this went on year after year after year. And CAA and the agencies I was with was like, do you want to do movies or not? Yeah. Please send me in for movies. But you're always fucking out of town. I mean, it's like, I know, but I want to making movies at the same time. Well, you got to make a choice, man. And it was, there's a part of me that was like, the guy that just wanted to keep creating. And each one I made it different. It's like if I did this genre here, the next one was going to be a thriller. Then it was going to be a true crime. Then it was going to be a romantic fantasy. Then it was a Hallmark Hall of Fame. And I just loved the fact that I could do what my heroes, of the old days did, which when you were in the studio, they handed you pictures and you had to do them. At least I got to choose them. And so there was a point where it's like, okay, you got a movie that, I guess it was not Tina Sinatra.
Nancy Sinatra?
Was Nancy the one that was the producer? No,
Oh,
Nancy
no,
was the singer.
Yeah, she's the singer.
And then it was Tina, I guess.
Okay, I don't know.
And her father was going to do a cameo in the movie. And so it was a chance to direct, Frank Sinatra, or this Hallmark Hall of Fame that was, ended up having Jason Robards, Brenda Fricker, Meg Tilly. And it was like, okay, I'm doing the Hallmark just because I remember as a kid, it was always great to see a Hallmark movie and Glenn Close was producing it. So suddenly I was in a whole nother world, but I was sort of bringing in what I knew from my filmmaking genre stuff to make sure things were edgy, but I also wanted to be more of an actor's director and got a chance to work with some just incredible actors. But like anything else, you get put in that box, and
Right.
But a lot of this is one of the things that really struck me early on was that a lot of the other big name genre guys who were doing horror movies in the 80s, they don't have 40 films to their credit. I mean, they
don't get to work enough. Yeah,
Right.
It must be frustrating either way. I bet you it's at least you get to keep working. And it's a craft most people don't get to practice often, which is part of the frustration of waiting years and years.
Well, you learn, like everybody says, you learn to make decisions very fast. I was in trouble all the time because I shot too much film. I spent too much time on the scenes with the actors. I was you're constantly trying to make these compromises between money, time, and if I look at an actor's face after a scene and I go, I know they didn't nail it. They know they didn't nail it. I'm the director. If I tell them I loved it, they know I'm lying. We're doing one more, and it's like, what? You're never going to make the, always getting in trouble. Always at the end of the day, okay, can we get the DP, Tom, come over here? We'd always have these powwows about, how are we going to get this thing back on schedule and so on. But to me, the bottom line is when the thing worked, everybody forgets that, but if it doesn't work, that's all they care about, that you played up against some huge, news story that just came out. It didn't do good numbers. And even though it got fabulous reviews and everything was great, you're a failure because nobody, came to the table to see it. The competition was too stiff. So that was heartbreaking because you kind of had Sunday night and then Monday morning, you're a nobody again, and it meant you had to just keep picking yourself up, going again. And there wasn't as much money like there is in films now where, the budgets to advertise them and promote them are 20 times bigger than the friggin', budgets themselves for the movie. And things come along like, what's the thing that was the Oculus? It just came out. I mean, I think it was $4 or $5 million that they did. And so everything else pretty much is gravy, and whatever one thinks about the movie, it's still, they got it made money. He'll go on and keep, making movies for a while. And that's it's hard enough to get a movie made, much less one that actually makes, its money back and then some.
You got to work with Phoebe Cates. Could you just lean in close to the microphone and just talk about her softly, gently, descriptively?
Before this gets naughty, a quick correction. I actually text Elise because I didn't want to misquote where the woman from Friday the 13th is located. She was not a princess. She was a duchess. And but she's now divorced, so she's no longer Duchess, and she is living in south of France with her new hubby, who Elise thinks is a photog.
Cry me a river.
Yes,
she went from being a Duchess to living in the south.
And
of
I
France.
don't think it was in the Middle East; it was probably somewhere in Europe, considering the prior stuff.
Interesting.
All right,
but there's a book there, Joe. There's a book there.
I want to hear about Phoebe Cates.
We're discussing Phoebe Cates.
No, true crime stuff is interesting. I already sent you an email recently just about this because to me, one of my favorite miniseries of all time was The Staircase. And it was made for HBO, and I have a very strange relationship with it because in New Zealand, I had friends who that was their favorite film of all time.
Yeah,
and I hadn't seen it. They would say, "This is the best film I've ever seen." I was like, "Really? This documentary?"
Oh, it's great.
It took me forever to get to it. I watch it. I moved to Chicago. I start teaching, and then I start teaching a class with this guy. His name's Neil, and I had this moment where it's almost like a psychic moment with somebody where I said, there's this one documentary I was saying to him. He said, "Oh, my wife's the subject of a documentary. And without even a beat, it could have been any film in the world. I just took one beat and I said, "Was it The Staircase?" And he goes, "How did you?" So Margie Blakemore, which is that's her married name, is the daughter of the convicted Peterson. Peterson now, and it just blew my mind to meet and then get to know somebody who was involved, and so. I can't believe that you're the guy who made the TV movie, because I remember back then looking up on IMDb and going, "What? There's a TV movie about this? How's that even possible?" And I still haven't seen it, so this isn't going to end with criticism. Don't worry. I want to see it.
That's all right. That's all right.
But I'm really, and this is an amazing story. If you never get to see it, I can't even imagine how much you could get in a movie, because in a 7-hour documentary, they still only do the first half of the story, because the story has gone on to have some big twists in real life.
What is this about?
It's about a woman is found dead at the bottom of her stairs, and her husband was outside, and he calls 911, and basically it charts. Basically, the guy has so many twists in his personal background, and he kind of gets demonized. One certain part of his lifestyle or life, is demonized because he's in Charlotte or. It's up, and even things like he writes creative fiction, and suddenly everyone in the documentary is like, oh, and they start going into his stories to make. But it's it's one of those things. I remember after watching 7 hours, I honestly didn't know whether he's innocent or guilty. I didn't know. My wife was like, oh, he's definitely innocent. I was like, you know what? I really don't know. And as we became friends with them, of course, you kind of get swayed, but I'm not going to ruin it, because in real life, some really interesting things have happened in the last year.
Yeah.
But obviously you didn't have that foresight when you're making a film. But I guess the question is actually not so much about that film, but just about, true life stories.
Yeah.
How much vetting do you have to do, or do you just have to take the script and run, or do you have to go, oh shit, okay, this is real, I'm going to research that angle. Oh yeah,
because you also did the Texas killer cheerleader mom.
Not the killer. No, that's the Heidi. That's the Hunter.
Yes,
Holly Hunter one. No, this was the Texas cheerleader scandal. The
Yes.
Fab
Oh,
Five.
yeah, I remember that one too.
And it's like Lifetime just loved chasing those
Salacious,
exploitive things, and I did one movie that literally was about teenage blowjobs and how a syphilis outbreak happened in North Carolina because something like 50, 60 people suddenly had syphilis, and they couldn't figure it out because they were practicing oral sex unprotected, of course, figuring that Clinton said it's not really sex,
Wow.
And so, I get this thing, and basically we got Marcia Gay Harden to be in it.
She's great. Yeah.
And, they didn't know what to call it. Eventually became, She's Too Young. And it really was about how girls needed to get the boys' attention, and that was more interesting, way of saying, okay, I won't have sex with you, but I'll do that. And
that's a TV movie.
It's a TV
so
movie.
How the hell do you
That's available. That's available.
How do I shoot something where the whole core I can't show?
Yeah.
How do you approach that? Is that just a purely all right?
Well, for me, movies are illusion, and part of that comes from being a magician, and part of it comes from the fact that it is in editing that you create an image in a person's head. So it's like what we were talking about earlier about gore. I mean, you can go really far, or you can just, put somebody's fingers in somebody's eyes and you're watching it, and then suddenly you see this motion, and then the blood goes on the killer, and you can imagine, what happened. And sometimes the effect doesn't look as good as what you imagined that happened. And
Very true.
I'm sure there's people will debate that with me, but it's the same thing here. We had to, show the girl get down, unbuckle it, see the guy's face, the way she, it's the foreplay. You get right down to as far as you can go that they'll allow, and then it's like.
And now quickly, let's talk about Phoebe Cates.
Right.
And then come right back to okay.
We could get Meg Tilly in here too, I think, right? We could get Meg Tilly in here too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but worse, I had to do one called Cyber Seduction, which is about boys getting addicted to porn on their phones. And again, it was scripted for him to watch TV at night watch the computer at night after his family went to bed. Instead of going to sleep, he was drinking Red Bulls and watching porn and, masturbating. And I was like, how the hell? This is Lifetime. You guys,
that's crazy. I didn't know the
We'll just do it tastefully, So there was a point when they were just really trying to push the edge as much as they could, and then the new administration came in. No, we're not doing that anymore. So Flowers in the Attic is about as risky as they're getting these days.
But did you so back to the true crime stuff, because you did a number of true crime? Did you?
Yeah.
Do you get into reading more about the cases? That's
yeah.
that
like,
an
do you go
interest
back
to you?
and talk to the
'Cause I'm a true crime
people, or-
junkie.
Yeah.
I can't wait till we do our true crime episode. We haven't done
We
that.
do
but
need to do one.
Yeah.
Well, I did, Murder in Greenwich, which was Michael Skakel, so it was getting into the whole Kennedy family thing. That was busted open by Mark Furman. Mark Furman went into Greenwich, hated because of the whole OJ thing. I had Chris Maloney playing Mark Furman, I use Chris so many times because I just love him as an actor. And it was this, we had such a backlash with that movie because Mark Furman, was credited as the guy that, did this and the story, even though Dominic Dunn was the one who kind of found the piece and handed it to Mark. So that had a lot of backlash, but nothing like the DC Sniper. I jumped into the DC Sniper 6 months after it had happened. These guys had not been convicted yet. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do as much homework as I could. And I did. I talked to people who had FBI gag orders. I know I'm not supposed to say, but so I got a lot of stuff from cops, from people that, knew them, whatever, that hadn't come out at all. How they shot through the back of that car, the Caprice, the walkie-talkies they found, which I went, oh, that's how the guy could look and see the trap. Because, Malvo was shooting over 8 lanes of traffic, nailing people in the head, single shot. How the hell did, Mohammed was watching the traffic and told him when to pull the trigger. You just stay focused. Things like that had not come out. Plus, I did something that I felt was really important, humanize these two guys. Because it was literally a love story about a man who lost his wife, was pissed off. Now she won't let him see his kids. So I'm going to start killing in the neighborhood. Eventually she'll get killed. They're going to think it's the serial killer, that did it. But I won't touch it. I got this boy who's going to be, my guy and do it. And he trained him how to shoot. He gave him this rigorous way of becoming a young man. And he did anything that Muhammad told him to do. What happened is that suddenly this took off as this is terrorism. And the story took off. So now suddenly Muhammad's going, well, this is great. I can go around and do this all over. And it became this sort of Western but everybody, was African-American. The sheriff, the bad guys, the wife, everything was this huge melodramatic thing that went worldwide. And by the fact that we were putting it on the air on USA, before the thing, there's a lot of people going, you can't do this. It's not fair to these guys. I went, they did it. I mean, come on. There's no question that they did it, but they just had not, gone through the process yet. And Malvo had these sketches that he was doing in jail that I got a hold of. And this is an incredible artist, this kid. He could have had an incredible future of some sort. He was very talented, but grabbed by the wrong guy, at the wrong point in his life.
There's another film now, Blue Caprice. I haven't seen it, but I think it came out last year. How was that?
They did a very good job with it.
But they obviously had time to look back now than you were making in the vacuum still.
Yeah, I mean, they did the story really pretty simple with the guy. I had to be doing, because we had Charles Dutton, do the Captain Moose story and his wife, Helen Shaver, and then, of course, the killers that I said I kind of put more emphasis on just because that was what's fascinating to me. How do you get this boy to do what you want and be so good at it? And then all the other, the families, there were so many multi-layers to that thing. But it was, again, one of those things where nobody's released it. I don't know, what happened. I ask every time I'm at USA, and they go, I don't know. So,
Wow.
I get the sense that you always got hired for these things, and they had structured something like, as kind of a news story, looking at a lot of different angles, and then you would kind of, your way into the story was always sort of human psychology.
Yeah.
You're just trying, like criminal psychology, just trying to get in their heads was really,
or
the victims in the case of Murder in Greenwich, to get into the victim's head.
And same thing with Laurie Dan. I did Murder of Innocence. Murder in the title, I'm your man.
Wow.
Which I think for horror fans, actually, I think like, if you've only seen kind of this stuff that Tom did in the 80s, I think Murder of Innocence is like your great unsung horror movie. I think it's actually a brilliant movie.
Yeah, I'm very proud of that in a non egotistical way. In that we approached it. I wanted to get inside the mind of a girl who was schizophrenic, manic compressive, and obsessive compulsive, as Laurie Dan was, and she was this beautiful girl. I mean, gorgeous, love sex. I know you'd like that. And that was the relationship with her husband. She was a great lay, and she was beautiful, and she was really unbalanced. And they started going to doctors, and they were 3 different psychiatrists were treating her for 3 different things and giving her all this medication. And she was going further and further out there. And I shot it, there was no dissolves, everything was hard cuts. I think it was the last thing we actually cut on film. And my editor, Charles Bornstein, actually got the ACE Award for the editing on that. And I wanted you to feel that fragmented, angry. Every time she made a phone call, it was like somebody, beating something to death because there was so much rage in her. And, as tragic as the story is, the worst thing was, she went into an elementary school and went into a classroom and saw these kids and just started firing at the children and killed a little boy, hurt a number of others. And then, ran and ended up taking her own life. But Valerie did an amazing job. I mean, I've done 3 movies with Valerie, Turn of the Screw, and we did in England with Dame, what's her name? I can't believe I just blanked on her name.
The kid?
No, the woman, the Avengers.
Dame Judy?
No. Who's the beautiful woman from the Avengers TV series? Was the voice of PBS.
I'll
It's
Google
in the book.
Wow, yeah.
It's in the book.
Anyway,
Buy the book for
That's
the
the
answer.
reason to buy the book,
Yes.
is to get
To
this
answer
one.
that question.
I was doing really good. How long have we been doing this before I finally brain farted on
We're
an
like
actor?
an hour and a half now, guys. So
Wow.
we're doing good.
Well, but anyway, she came into this role, and I thought, I don't know if she's got the ability to reach down and get this raw and horrible.
Emma
and
Peel? No.
Yeah, that's the character, Emma Peel. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Then let me hear. I will.
From the-
pull. Diana Rigg.
Diana Rigg.
Oh, yeah.
Thank
There you
you.
Boom.
God. It's a strange name, though, right? Rigg.
Yeah.
But
That's
yeah,
for the
she
5
was.
people screaming at us right now.
I know. He's a schmuck.
How hard is it? I mean, I'm just curious. How hard is it now? Because even saying that you guys are doing a draft of your film, the film we were just talking about. How hard is it to kind of get back into the feature film game, and especially say even genre stuff? I mean, obviously going indie, that's on your own back if you want to get back into the game. But how hard is it after being so successful doing the thing that you're doing for so long? Because I imagine it's tough. And Hollywood's always been ageist and all these things, and the people who run it change every few years. So
Yeah. Well, I think one of my greatest virtues is stupidity. I really think in this business you got to be kind of stupid because the odds are impossible. Everybody's going to tell you, you're not going to do it. If the guy in the bear suit is telling John Frankenheimer how to direct, that's not a smart guy right there. And so, to me, it was just this, I got to do it, this sort of keep pushing ahead until they tell you, no more, we're moving on to something else, or, I choose to try something else. In this world, the TV movies were just, they're going off the networks, they were going off cable, and the last thing was Lifetime. And the last 2 that I did at Lifetime were the 2 things that I had the least amount of investment emotionally. And like Joe was saying, if I can't connect with the human side of it, I'm disconnected. And it really was for me that, okay, I've hit the wall here, and that whole world had changed. Lifetime was taken over by A&E. They were going to change, get rid of the old guard. Let's, try something else. And that was that point where I was going, okay, now what? And and you're at that age where I didn't pursue.
you're at that age where you're still touring. You're with your rock band.
You got your mime going on.
Well, that happened. That I didn't expect.
You're asking how hard it is to get back to feature films, but you've gone back and you've done some mime shows recently. You've
LA
gotten
Mime
back
Company.
together with your band
Exactly.
from the late '60s. So I mean,
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like such a stretch for this guy, really.
I'm getting somehow a chance to fulfill fantasies and dreams that I had, given up long ago. When I was directing, the idea of getting in front of a camera or getting up in front of people, if I had a dream about it, I literally would wake up in a cold sweat. I could not see doing that. And I love to perform. I love being on stage. I couldn't fathom that at all. I get a call, and there's a guy that was in the Sloss from back in the 60s, found out that this record that they did called Making Love was selling on eBay for $6,650. They wanted to talk to the guys that were all part of that world. I kind of came into the sloths just as they were sort of dissolving. And the next thing you know, we're playing these festivals. We were in Spain in December at these 60s rock things, and we are famous by association because we opened for the Doors, we opened for Iron Butterfly, for the Animals, for Pink Floyd. I mean, all these groups of the Sunset Strip love. We were, part of that. I'm probably one of the few surviving lead singers from that period. Everybody else is dead. I mean, overdosed. I got out before that happened and got into mime and stuff. But now I'm right back out there doing it just as crazy, more crazy than I did it when I was 16. And that feels amazing to suddenly go up there and be in front of, like we were in Spain, 1,500 people, yelling and screaming. And, that picture on the back of the book is the Spain thing, and,
pretty bad.
Going out into the crowd and having people, grab you and dance. And
That's like a full arena.
It was amazing. Oh, and we've been playing these places that, everything from Little Dives to, the Roxy. And, there's no money, of course. The craziness of a bunch of guys in their 60s playing songs from their 60s, basically saying, guess what? We're going to make it. Yeah, right. And by the fact that it's so completely illogical is the very reason to do it. To me, if it was like easy, if I was 16 again, it's like, yeah, me and 50 million other guys. How many other guys in their 60s are putting a band back together and saying, okay, we're really not famous, but now's our chance?
I wish somebody was making a documentary about that. I mean, that to me would have been an incredible journey to watch,
It's amazing. I mean, and they, if you, I don't want to say if you act like a rock star, they treat you like one. It's not that. It's like literally, I still have so much rage and so much of that wanting to get out there and do it. And I, I have a little trampoline that I run across and I hit and I go off into the audience and fire comes out of my hands and I take I actually slasher rock. There's a point where I tear down my shirt and jam it into my chest and blood comes down and, hold it up and then reach into my heart and it turns, I take a fan and it turns into little red hearts that go everywhere. Oh, wow. So suddenly the magic, the horror, the mime, the rock and roll is all coming together in the sloths in these performances. That shot on the cover of that is me electrifying myself with this device. I put water on the mic and I grab it, which again is almost which I wasn't a big fan of Alice Cooper because I knew him back in the 60s when they were in a group called the Nazz. So I'm sort of doing that, and the irony that obviously he did the music for the Friday. So there's just these strange,
weird,
things that sort of cut, back and forth into your life. And as I said, now it's like, we're going to remake One Dark Night. So again, it's going back. It's the rock and roll is going back. The LA Mime Company came together. We performed at the Magic Castle and this tribute to those mimes from that period. So where it all goes, eventually, the end of the book will tell you that as far as I'm concerned, when we did the 60th birthday party, I did not want it to be over. I didn't want to say, okay, now I'm going into the third act. No, fuck that. I'm still in the second act. Death is the beginning of the third act. And in there, I'll, discuss, and I'm absolutely serious what's in there, what'll happen after I'm gone. And that's another thing that I'm working on now, preparing for that. And it's something that kind of ties into that whole thing of what is science and what is metaphysical and how these two worlds are beginning to collide. And it's your belief system. To me, ghosts are energy. And we just like internet, 20 years ago, can you imagine showing somebody a phone and saying, you know what you can do with this? I say, oh, bullshit, you know? And I feel the same thing, too, with these, the energy things that we just don't understand yet, that there's things that we can do. And I've seen it. I've spun toothpicks without touching them. I've taken something and read it. And it's not that I have any gift. We all can do it. We just don't take the time to train that part of the mind to do it. It's an amazing, amazing thing. But there's definitely more than news, weather, and sports out there, kids.
You started by asking why, what prompted us to do this book. And I think it's because, we've been talking for about like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've just like skipped the stone.
Right, we've got all the starts
so
of all
many
the
things.
different
Right.
Yeah.
That's why it's still worth reading the book. But no, I think about energy is interesting. I mean, negative energy is something often people talk about with ghosts and spirit. I've heard stories from my mom's the kind of person who is like, would never believe in ghosts. And yet she's had 2 experiences. They're just absolutely unexplainable. One was walking into an apartment for sale in London where her and my dad walked out going, that was the most dread-inducing. Like, it looks gorgeous. They walked out going, oh my God, what was that feeling? And then, of course, they find out, the previous tenant, killed the wife and jumped out the window, and there's no way to explain that feeling except that you felt it. And it's interesting. I don't know enough about it to have an intelligent conversation with you, but I am fascinated by such.
I can have a conversation. I don't know how intelligent.
I'll just grunt.
Because it's a belief system, really. I mean, and it's like you have to either accept it or reject it because it doesn't make sense. But as soon as you can prove it with a formula, then it's a science. Right now, it's like if one person goes in that room, they don't feel anything. There's no ghost. Somebody else goes in. Holy shit, and they're more sensitive to it. I don't think they're faking it. I've gone into houses and go, yeah, it's clean, it's fine. Like in New Orleans, 4:00 in the morning, bam, bam, bam on the front door. It's like, oh shit, somebody must have lived here before. Go look out the window, don't see anybody. Go lay down, bam, bam, bam on the front door again. Ah shit, go downstairs, look out, nobody. Now you hear bam, bam, bam above. And this is one of these houses, with the 2 stories, the kind of great, like New Orleans haunted mansion, little but smaller. And so it already has that sort of vibe to it. But I'm going up and down the stairs, following the bang, 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 going, I don't believe I'm doing this. I'm not scared, but I feel like there is something going on. And, 2 nights later, same thing, 4:00 in the morning. And the footsteps and the banging, it was solid cement on the porch. So what I was hearing was not what was actually there. And why it went up and down, I can't explain it, but when I talk to somebody later, they go, did you look in the mirrors? I said, why would I look in the mirrors? It goes, no, the legend is legend. Yeah, that house has had things happen, and if you look in the mirror long enough, you see it. And I go, okay, now we're into a whole nother realm here,
I lived in Savannah, Georgia for a couple of years, and everyone was a ghost tour operator down there, and every place had stories. I mean, there's this one house. I mean, it's worth going if you ever go there. It's on a corner, prime real estate, gorgeous big place, and it was always closed. No one ever lived there from the time I was there, and I was always like, how is that even possible? And you'd hear people would move in for 2 days and then move out because it was the doctor during the what's it called, where the yellow fever hit, and literally they didn't have enough places to put the bodies, so they're just burying them. There's like a pit of 30-something bodies that had just been put under the house back in the day. And you're like, it's just, those are the things that make you most believe, is the fact that you have prime real estate. Money doesn't lie, right? People in America will live anywhere, but here's this house on a corner and no one will live there. There's something very powerful about that still,
it's just not easy to explain. But I have to say if it happens so many times in our world over so many years, and of course the only way we can call it is a ghost or something scary. It's not always scary as much as it is just unusual to the point that your mind can't quite find a place for it to fit in. But when you see certain things or feel certain things, as you're feeling bad, or you picking up something from this table that was someplace else, or you picking up something in the room, or I'm getting something from you. If I'm a certain type of sensitivity and you're a certain type of sensitivity, we're going to bounce differently, and you see that in life all the time. Why can't it not be in objects and other things that were made, at a certain point? And, I've just seen too many things that I've experienced. And even when I drag my wife to some of these ghost hunting expeditions that I've gone on, she'll have the encounter. I won't. Like we did a place up in Northern California where a little girl had died in this upstairs room. And I was there with toys and a candle. And, I was going to stay up all night till I saw the little girl. My wife fell asleep. Eventually, I nodded off. And she woke up to somebody walking up the bed, like over her body, and a child, and it didn't freak her out as much as it's like, I don't understand what's going on. I didn't tell her this, by the way, And it was only the next morning when she looked in the guest book. It's like, yes, we saw Emily. No, we didn't see Emily. No, because if I told her, she would have been too freaked out. But she had the experience. And this is a, dyed in the wool, doesn't believe in any of that kind of Christian woman that would not, and as I said, her sensibilities, her sensitivity attracted whatever this energy was that was still there, or could be pulled in. I can't really be specific, but I certainly know, it exists.
So that's the last chapter of the book?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Nice.
more reason to read the book.
We keep talking about doing
There
a
are good ghost
psychic
stories in
episode.
there. We
I
do.
think
We
this
have
has
talked about it.
expanded my interest.
Yeah.
Because
I'm
before I was
scared.
like,
I have
I don't want to
questions
do a
after the
psychic
show.
episode guide. But now
There's some cool stuff.
I'm interested.
I've worked on now 7 seasons of one of those reality ghost shows, so I can't start talking about this now. Well, it'll be another hour and a half.
Yeah.
Next episode, next time we have you on.
But what
Yeah.
about Phoebe Cates? We never got to.
Elric
talk
just wanted
slowly.
you to describe her.
Just
I think
describe
was
things
it.
that are Phoebe Kate-ish. That's fine. I mean, obviously, there's way too much life, but we didn't even touch on some of the. You were telling me about some of the old Hollywood directors that he had met when he came out here, Capra, and all this stuff. But let's keep teases because this show is just a giant advertisement for your book.
I hope so.
Can people even get it yet? I don't know.
I think it's out.
Get it anywhere. I mean, you can just go on Amazon,
Okay.
plug it in.
It's on Amazon. You guys are doing a signing at Dark Delicacies, correct?
Yeah,
That's coming up.
Sunday, right? Sunday
yes,
at 2.
it is this Sunday.
Sunday. So as soon as you hear this, you have 2 days to prepare.
Yes.
Go to Dark Dells and meet these guys there for it.
And William Friedkin is signing Sorcerer at 2 p.m. there on Saturday.
Saturday?
So I'm going then too.
Pretty
that's
epic
worth it. That's
weekend.
great.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I'll be there all weekend. Plus,
When
I was
the-
there for Evil Speak last night. So yeah,
Right.
just crazy week there.
That's great.
And Jason Lives is playing when?
June 13th.
13th. Yeah,
And you'll be
Friday
there.
the
At
13th.
Cine Family, yeah. Well, I'm trying to get as much of the cast as I can, to get there. I think Tom Matthews is coming.
Oh, cool.
Darcy DeMoss. My wife Nancy. I think Vinny Gustafaro and his wife Cindy are also in the movie. Trying to get C.J. Graham, who plays Jason. I've been reaching out to him. If anybody knows how to find C.J., let me know. So as many as we possibly can. And as they've already advertised, I will be dragging Jason's coffin down the aisle, which I own,
wow.
and be there for if you want to take pictures, lay in it, whatever you'd like.
I'll
Another
text
one-
Tony
Wow.
Goldwyn right now. There you go.
And when the hell are the Sloths playing in Los Angeles again? Because I
We
need
don't
to
have
see this.
anything booked at the moment. We're at place Ironsides in Sacramento at the end of this month, and then we're at Winter's Tavern in Pacifica outside of San Francisco the next day, which is the top of June. Oh God, when's the next thing? There's another. We were supposed to be in Arizona, but I think that fell apart. Supposed to go back to Spain in September, and there was something in L.A., and I'm sorry, I can't remember what it was. If you
You
go
have a
on
Facebook page?
Sloth,
You gotta go
Yeah.
see it.
thesloth.net.
.net. Okay.
Sloth as in one of the deadly sins, sloth. I'd love to hear what you say after you see this and tell me to lay down and go to
We need
sleep.
to see it live.
Get,
So-
get into your crypt, son. Your time is done.
Well, the book, Strange Idea of Entertainment, on Amazon. If you're in town, go meet these guys at Dark Delicacies. Tom, thank you so much for coming
My
in.
pleasure.
A lot of
Thank
great
you, guys.
stories.
Really fun.
Joe, thanks for joining us again.
Glad to be here.
I'm sure you'll be back.
I
I hope so. Yeah.
He writes
Ghost stories.
a book every week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a book
so,
a week.
yeah.
We'll have him back.
He's the master, boy.
Yeah.
I wish I had his knowledge.
All right,
I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah. Stumped.
Yeah,
I
so-
play trivia with him, so I know that we're all pretty average when it comes to the crunch.
I feel like I used to be much better at trivia, and then the baby came along, and now
your
my
brain-
That's how everyone
synapses
is with the baby.
don't fire
Yeah,
anymore.
It's gone. How old is
Actually-
yours right now?
She's almost 4 months.
Oh my gosh.
But I think the first time you guys had me on, I was at 3 or 4 weeks in.
I remember that.
And you kept throwing me questions or comments, and I would just kind of look and go, "Wait, was that to me? What were you talking about? I had no idea what was going on here."
yeah,
Yeah,
kids kind of
funny.
suck your brain just a little bit. So.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'll never know.
Oh, you just cursed yourself. It's going to happen
That's
now.
happening.
One night
Whatever.
stand, you're done. You're done, dude.
All right. Thanks again to you guys
excellent.
for coming out. Thanks for
Yeah,
everybody
thank
for
you.
Do
listening.
we know who we have next week?
I believe we're doing our anthology episode. And I'll just
Yes.
leave it at that.
Excellent anthology episode next
there we
week.
go.
Plenty to watch. Thank you very much.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.